himself in the political conversation. He's stepped back somewhat from that, I guess, just by virtue of not being in Washington every day. But he's still, of course, extremely vocal on X and on quite divisive issues, and that could be a risk for this company for quarters to come.
And that's off down 2/3% right now, or thanks to Bloomberg's Craig Trudell for that. It is an up market though. Let's check on stocks more broadly. We have the Nasdaq 100 now up 0.5%, the S&P 500 up about 0.2%, so a little less effusive in its praise. The Dow was actually down by 0.2%, and the VIX is back above 17. The dollar index, DXY at least, is stronger by 0.2%, thanks in particular to a weaker yen. Coming up in the next hour, we'll speak to Tesla investor Ross Garner about models. Simplifies Paisley Nardini joins too.
People are paying attention now to what we're doing in a way that wasn't happening 5 years ago. I think the convergence, not just of the hardware investments, but the AI investments in particular, have been the real watershed for us in helping people understand why we've always believed having these devices be wearable and having sensors and having context of the world around you has been so important. And it's like, oh yeah, of course, now that we realize there's going to be potentially super intelligent assistant that's operating there, you want it to have for free all the context on what you've heard, what you've seen, what you're doing, so it can help you the most out as you go about your day, trying to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. So we feel a lot of vindication in that. I think the question is, will it be us? Will it be a competitor? That depends on our execution and their execution. I have a lot of confidence that the paradigm that we're in right now, which has been stable for a long time, right? The phone that you all have in your pockets now is roughly the same as the phone you had in your pocket 4 or 5 years ago. There's not really a lot of new innovation happening at that scale. There is a lot of things. The phone is the greatest consumer electronic device ever built, and yet there's also a lot of things that we wish it could do better or different. And I think with AI and integrated context with the world around us, that becomes more and more obvious. So I'm very confident that the paradigm will shift in that time frame. And you're right, we all do the same. We have a lot less than 1 year, we think, and a lot more than in a decade. That really is going to be true, I think, when it comes to these shifts.
Making money isn't about drowning in emotions. It's about understanding what's actually.
Markets are the best way to glean signal from noise, and that is what we try to do every morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry. We'll show you what's happening in ETFs like no one else. ETF IQ, only on Bloomberg.
This is CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by Progressive Insurance.
I'm Deborah Rodriguez. President Trump's made no secret of his disdain for former FBI Director James Comey.
I think he's a crooked guy. He's a dirty guy.
Comey has just arrived at court in Alexandria, Virginia, where he will be arraigned on federal charges of obstruction and lying during Senate testimony 5 years ago. Former federal prosecutor Scott Frederickson.
Essentially, he's going to argue, among other things, in his first motions that This is a vindictive prosecution, and unlike most other cases, he has quite a load of evidence to bring to the court.
President Trump fired Comey during his first administration. The president is calling for the governor of Illinois and the mayor of Chicago to be jailed for failing to protect ICE officers. It comes the same day Texas National Guard troops hit the streets of the city. Mayor Brandon Johnson.
Handpicking National Guard's people from another state, the state of Texas, and then sending them to the state of Illinois. This is illegal, unconstitutional, and dangerous.
He and Governor Pritzker filed lawsuits hoping to send them back home. Day 8 of the government shutdown, and the president is still threatening to fire furloughed federal employees. Correspondent Nancy Cordes.
His timeline, I have to say, keeps shifting. Over the weekend, he said it was going to happen right away. He's now saying we'll learn more about his plans in 4 or 5 days. So we're still waiting to see how real this threat is.
Flight delays are spreading because of protest sick-outs by air traffic controllers working without pay. We're hearing from the Good Samaritans who helped save the victims of a helicopter crash in Sacramento, California, Monday night.
The medical helicopter crashed onto a busy highway. The pilot, paramedic, and nurse on board were all injured. Pen Crescenzo was one of 15 nearby drivers who lifted the wreckage off Nurse Susie Smith.
Found a spot to grab onto the helicopter.
Hello, my name is DrPaulCottrell, and we are live streaming on Rumble, YouTube, and my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com, simulcasting on X Spaces, so there's many ways to follow the live stream. I also repost on all my channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. I also have Substack, Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee. So please help support the work that I do. All these videos are for free. I have thousands of videos out there for free talking about the different breaking news, my perspective on the markets, even scientific endeavors. So if you'd like to help support the work, please donate through Stripe, PayPal, or Buy Me a Coffee on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You could be a paid member to my Patreon channel. You could be a paid member to my Substack channel. It's a great way to help support the work. Another way to help support the work is ask your social media to follow me. You can follow me on all these different channels. You can also follow me on X and on GETTR. All the links are in the description of this video and all my videos. In addition, I have great products on my website. I have ebooks talking about finance, artificial intelligence, genomics, endocrinology. Also, I have supplements that will help to slow down the aging process and boost up your immune system. And I have course material on immunology and pulmonology that you can learn from. So these are different ways to help support the work that I do, and it's a win-win situation. You get informed, and you're helping support the channel. Thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the olive leaf extract. Olive leaf extract will help to bring down inflammation, help to improve your lipid profile. When you take olive leaf extract every day, what you're doing is you're boosting up your immune system and helping your cardiovascular system. It's a dual purpose supplement that you should be taking every day. Very important to take. Another great supplement to take to help support your pancreas is the digestive enzyme complex. The digestive enzyme complex has enzymes in there to break up your proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids. So you're reducing the load on your pancreas. Once you turn to about age 40, your pancreas doesn't function as well, no matter how healthy you are. So it's important to boost up the health of your pancreas by taking digestive enzyme complex. There's an added benefit from taking digestive enzyme complex. You're reducing the load on your pancreas, but you're able to absorb your nutrients. It's less stress on your digestive system, and it has bromelain. Bromelain is an enzyme that helps to break up clots. It's fibrinolytic, super important. So this will help with your cardiovascular health too. In addition, it has proteolytic enzymes that help to break up glycoproteins. This is the reason why I said take digestive enzyme complex during the crisis of 2020. So it behooves you to take digestive enzyme complex during the fall and the winter season to mitigate some of these problems. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the digestive enzyme complex. And another great supplement to get rid of that brain fog and to help with your neural function is taking Clarity Factor. Clarity Factor will get rid of that brain fog, help support memory, and over time, your dendritic connections are going to improve, your thinking will be faster, your sleep will be better, your recall will improve, and this is a great way to slow down the aging process for your neurons and get rid of that brain fog. So please go to my store, take the Clarity Factor. This stacks very well with resveratrol and C6D, ubiquinol, and NAD+. But take the Clarity Factor every day and drink filtered water. Super important. With that, thank you for joining. The markets are opened up. The S&P 500 is trading at 6,736. VIX is at 1688. Euro is trading at 116. Oil is trading at $62.21 a barrel. BITO is trading at 20.31. Bitcoin is trading at 123,000. Natural gas is trading at 3.4. Oil is trading at 31.29. And Japanese yen is trading at 152.59. Because the yen is above 150, the VIX is in the 16s, and these are indicators showing less stress in the financial markets, less stress in the U.S. equities, and therefore we're going to continue to melt up with the S&P 500. Now, there are a few headwinds. Tariffs is still a headwind. The government shutdown is a headwind. Are we in an AI bubble? That's a headwind, and we'll cover that shortly. But overall, I still have a target of 6,800 to 7,000 by year end for the S&P 500. Now, if the AI bubble bursts in this quarter, in Q4 of this year, the chances of being at 7,000 is diminished. It'll be more like 6,800, maybe even 6,500. Right now, the S&P 500 support level is at 6,500. The resistance level is 6,800. I still have a target of 6,800 to 7,000 by year end for S&P 500. But we have to pay attention to the earnings announcements and projections for the hyperscalers. Oracle is already in negative cash flow. The question is, with this big AI build out, we'll actually see the Mag 7 start to have problems with revenues relative to their expenditures? I think we will. Now the question is does the bubble burst in Q4 or Q1? One side of the coin is that, well, a lot of institutional investors are going to need to close the book because they were late to the party. They need to close year end with a positive note. So the probability is probably only about 70% chance that we're going to see a downturn in Q4. There's a higher probability of seeing the downturn in Q1. But we have to really pay attention to what's going on with the hyperscalers, because they are going in debt, and there's these, there's these balance sheet shenanigans that are taking place with financing some of this build out. That's worrisome, but I suspect in Q4 we will melt up. But that's an emerging headwind that people need to pay attention to. So with that said, let's go to Bloomberg.
is key to any sustainable turnaround. We actually had a great story on the terminal recently that the cash infusions have done little to fix the core business. It's money-losing chip-making operation. So perhaps investors still keep an eye on this. One thing HSBC is saying is that the only deal that matters, that could fundamentally change anything, would be one involving technology sharing with TSMC. Still, obviously, super strong year for Intel despite the move today.
Absolutely. Okay, so a downgrade dooming Intel shares, at least for today. There's also a downgrade on FedEx.
Yeah, and the reaction is even worse. FedEx is down 2%. The downgrade is coming from JP Morgan. They cut the recommendation to neutral from overlay. The price tag is still positive, a little bit of gain from here. He wrote that the perception of a weakened price discipline among less than truckload carriers justifies lower multiples. We've seen even from FedEx, their projection is about 1 billion hits from the trade volatility this year, and clearly that has been one of the biggest companies people are watching when it comes to impact from tariffs, and that so far is really weighing on the company. Most of the reduction to adjusted operating profit stems from lower shipments from China to the US. Obviously, that's a highly profitable shipping lane. The transport sector, JP Morgan says, faces abysmal market sentiment. Some negative sentiment there. Oracle had a really rough day yesterday, and today we're seeing a big reversal. Stock is up about 2% now. The ticker is ORCL. Of course, it came after the information reported that its high cloud computing business is generating lower revenue than many on the street have been estimating. But the reaction on the street is not negative at all. Mizuho is saying this is a buying opportunity. Bloomberg Intelligence is saying gross profit of less than 20% is not that surprising. And generally, we're seeing a lot of positive optimism. Oracle shares have jumped around 70% this year. Demand for artificial intelligence computing has been soaring. And clearly, investors don't want to miss on any buying dip opportunity, and we see that on display today.
All right, good stuff. Denitsa Zakova, thank you so much. Cross-asset reporter for Bloomberg News with our morning movers. And for more conversations like this, be sure to subscribe to our new Stock Movers Reports. Listen for 5-minute audio reports on the biggest winners and losers in the stock market. Subscribe to Stock Movers on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you listen. All right, let's stay with the tech space and move over to xAI, which is Elon Musk's AI startup. It's raising more financing than initially planned. And Ed Ludlow, our Bloomberg Tech co-host, joining us from San Francisco to give us a little more context here. xAI is backed by a number of big companies, including NVIDIA. Tell us how much money it's raising.
Yes, it's a very specific mechanism where a special purpose vehicle split between about $12.5 billion of debt and $7.5 billion of equity used the funds to go out and buy GPUs, specifically NVIDIA GPUs. xAI then basically rents or leases those GPUs from the investment vehicle over a period of 5 years is what we've been reporting and is our understanding. And as part of that, we have broken the news that NVIDIA is going to contribute about $2 billion to the equity piece. But basically what it means is that the investors own the GPUs, they get guaranteed return because xAI has to pay them a fee or a rental fee over the course of the term. But xAI doesn't take all the debt onto its balance sheet. And so this could be a bit of a template, for how these mega infrastructure deals go going forward.
Where is xAI, Ed, in this AI story here? What's the feeling in the valley?
Yeah, it's very hard to place because xAI, and in particular Elon Musk, move very quickly. And they have two specific data centers. One is more complete, Colossus 1. And what we're reporting around this financing is the chips for Colossus 2, which they started building in March. And so from an infrastructure standpoint, Jensen Huang has talked about this, saying that he's betting Elon Musk can get to 1 gigawatt of capacity first, because that's what Elon Musk does. On the actual output side, their large language model and Grok, we don't have as much evidence or data of the user base and usership of Grok, like in the enterprise setting, for example. We don't know about how that particular software that xAI develops is in a competitive environment against like an OpenAI or Anthropic. But largely noises from xAI themselves, but others in the valley talk about how it's somewhere that people really want to work. they want to go and work for Elon. And in the talent war context, that's a big story.
Okay, thanks for that context, Ed. One thing you mentioned when explaining this deal that XAI has put together, the fundraising, is that NVIDIA is one of the backers, but the SPV, the special purpose vehicle, is going to then go out and buy NVIDIA chips. This all feels kind of circular, incestuous, if you want to put it another way. Is this going to create problems? I mean, are people raising their eyebrows over this, that this all feels very like, I'm putting money in so that you can go then buy some of my other stuff?
So important, Jensen Huang, the NVIDIA CEO, went on another network an hour ago and basically confirmed our reporting that NVIDIA was going to participate, that he wished he could have put more money into this, what he called, fundraising. But he also talks about the idea that this mechanism was not traditional venture, and nor is it straight vendor financing. The circular part is the bit that people are most focused on, because on paper it's NVIDIA saying, here's $2 billion, which we know XAI is going to use indirectly through the SPV to buy $2 billion worth of NVIDIA chips. But Jensen Huang did go on to say in that interview that if you take, for example, the OpenAI deal announced in the last 10 days, that's a $100 billion agreement over many years. And according to NVIDIA and Jensen Huang, there is no mandatory requirement that OpenAI use that money. I'm pausing, guys, because we actually have no idea if it's cash. We have no idea if it's just equity. But according to Jensen Huang, it's not mandatory for OpenAI to use the proceeds to buy NVIDIA gear. They are free to go out and do other deals like they did with AMD.
Yeah, so I think there's great reporting here on the Bloomberg Terminal from Bloomberg Technology folks about these circular deals and kind of weaving them all together, preparing to take a look at that. Ed Longo, Bloomberg Tech co-host, he's out there in San Francisco, right smack in Middle Silicon Valley, in all these deals that are getting announced here in the world of AI. Raising the eyebrows, as Scarlett mentioned, of some investors here just kind of wondering about the total dollar amounts and kind of this cross-investing.
I don't know. Once they have these special vehicles on the balance sheet, and there's a combination of equity and debt financing, and the company that's offering the chips is putting in $2 billion of equity into the special vehicle. Well, I mean, wait a minute. This could be a problem. I need to really think about this. I could go a little bit deeper into it, but I don't like, on the surface, I don't like the agreement between XAI and NVIDIA, because it feels a little kind of like Enron. All right? Now, maybe it's not. Maybe it's not. Enron was all fluff and no substance, where this has substance. So it's a little different. But the question is, are we seeing the beginnings of financial engineering to hide debt or to hide expenditures because of the build out of AI? And if so, is this the beginnings of a bubble? It might be. It might be. And this is the headwind that I'm talking about with the S&P 500. Will this be investment that's productive, that leads to higher valuations? Mag 7 are already highly, in the stratosphere in terms of valuation compared to historical averages for stocks in the S&P 500. So we're already at nosebleed kind of levels. I'm a little concerned that this may be the beginnings of a bubble. But I have to really sit down and think about the movement of the money and how this is all working out with this special vehicle. Let's play the CNBC. Jensen Huang was on about an hour ago talking about this very subject. So we're going to listen in and see if we get a little bit more clarity on what's going on with this special vehicle. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nanosilver soaps that I have. These structural nanosilver soaps you can get in 4 different scents. You can get it in the lemongrass, charcoal tea tree, peppermint, and lavender. Very high quality structural nanosilver soaps you can use every day. But like I said, this is made from structural nanosilver. Very high quality, and you should be using them for the fall and winter season. You're gonna need it, trust me. Because this fall and winter in the United States is gonna be problematic. And you're gonna know a lot of people that aren't feeling well. So you better start preparing. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. Also, if you're 40 years of age, you should be taking vitamin B complex. So if you're 40 years of age or older, you need to boost up your cellular metabolism and you need to improve the health of your mitochondria. This will help that. The first 4 B vitamins boost up the electron transport chain within the mitochondria so you can produce more ATP. And with more energy, your cells perform better. And this has B12. B12 is going to help with your neurons. You're going to need to protect your neurons because you're getting older. But not just that. You're going to need to protect your neurons because of the aftershock from 2020. Within 5 years, in your social network, people that are 40 years of age or older are going to get early onset of dementia if they don't start preparing. Why? Because of higher inflammation at the cerebral level, ischemic issues, amyloidosis issues, and a very, very, very small percentage of a chance of prion. So you need to start protecting your neurons. Super important. Within your social network, you're going to know within 5 years or earlier, 30% of the people you know that are 40 years of age or older are going to have early onset of dementia. For the ones that don't start mitigating some of the problems. Now, how do you mitigate? Proper supplementation. How do you mitigate? Doing certain types of exercises, balancing exercises, stretching exercises, that's activating the cerebellum and helping you balance, helping with gait issues, walking with a brisk pace, a little bit of cardio to improve the cardiovascular health, super important. 70% of these cases that will have the early onset of dementia, you'll have 30% of the population that are 40 years or older within 5 years getting early onset of dementia, 30%. Within that 30%, 70% of them are going to have ischemic issues, blood flow issues, either vascular bleeding or microclotting. Another 24.5% or a little bit more than that will have amyloidosis, and less than 0.1%. Less than 1%, around 0.5%, maybe a little less than that, maybe about 0.4%, will have the problem with prion. So if you reduce inflammation, improve your cardiovascular health, you are radically changing the probability function. Because if you have better blood flow, if you have better cardiovascular health, you're mitigating 75% of the issue. If you reduce the inflammation, you're reducing the chances of having misfolded proteins that lead to amyloidosis. So bringing down inflammation and having a better cardiovascular health is super important. You need to protect your neurons and reduce the stress of the neuron. So if you pay attention to what I'm saying, you're going to mitigate the problem that's starting to arise. Now, the crisis of 2020 led to dysfunctioning of the immune system. Either your immune system is over revved up with autoimmune disorder or underperforming what I call AIDS-like syndrome. And then you have the other problem where you have higher incidences of the big C, turbo C, right? So you really have to pay attention to the aftershock of 2020. So the next big thing that happened, I mean, we already saw the turbo shot, the turbo seed already in the data. I mean, it's there. Immune dysfunction is already there in the data. What's going to start popping up is early onset of dementia. And what you're going to start noticing within your social network, you're going to start noticing individuals having problems thinking and having problems speaking. That's where it's going to start. And then shortly after that, you're going to start seeing gait issues, maybe a little bit of Parkinsonian tremor. Pay attention.
Don't raise your voice to prove your rights. Focus your mind with every word of irrefutable fact you can find. Because conviction is the calm that comes when you know that you really do know.
Let's talk about vendor financing, because that has been something that has raised a lot of questions on Wall Street since you cut this deal with OpenAI. Yesterday, Bloomberg is reporting that you have a $2 billion in financing that you're going to be involved with XAI to help them with these same stories. But this idea of circular financing, your customers can't afford to buy these chips yet, so you're going to help them out with money along the way. That leads some people to think back to what happened with companies during the big buildup like a Lucent or a Nortel in the early days. Is this different, and if so, how?
Well, first of all, XAI, I'm super excited about the financing opportunity that they're doing. You know, the only regret I have about XAI, we're an investor already. The only regret I have is I didn't give him more money. You know, almost everything that Elon's part of, you really want to be part of as well. And he gave us the opportunity to invest in XAI. I'm just delighted by that. And so that's an investment into a really great future company, and I'm really excited about that. That's not vendor financing per se. But what's going on in the world versus what happened in 2000 is just dramatically different. You know, back then, as you recall, there were pets.com, hospitals.com, and all of the internet companies combined was about $30-40 billion in size. If you look at the hyperscalers now, that's where the first tranche of AI infrastructure is building. If you look at the hyperscalers, that's about $2.5 trillion of business that's already operating today. That business, that $2.5 trillion business, and the capex that goes underneath that is about, call it $500 billion. That transition from a classical CPU-based computing to now generative AI computing powered by GPUs, that transition is just starting. So we've got to build into $500 billion worth of capacity infrastructure that's already naturally growing by itself, and we're in the beginning phases of that. If you just look at NVIDIA's AI infrastructure business, you know, call it a couple of $100 billion so far. We're a couple of $100 billion into a multi-trillion-dollar build-out. So that's number one. The second part of it that's really unique is that we have a new generation of AI companies. The new AI companies like OpenAI and Anthropic and XAI and companies that are well, you know, Thinking Machine Labs from Mira and Ilya Sutskever's SSI and Misha's company Reflection. And I mean, there's a whole bunch of amazing AI model builders now. This generation of AI model builders, what's happened in the last several months, a transition happened that is really, really important. For the last several years, they've been generating tokens, you know, these AI tokens, basically at a loss. And the reason for that is because the early AI models they were super interesting, really captivated a lot of attention, but they weren't useful enough to pay for. The last several months has been very clear that the new technology is now reasoning, it's doing research. Before it answers a question, it goes on the web and studies other PDFs and websites. It can now use tools, generate information for you, and it creates responses that are really useful. I use it every day, to the point where now the tokens are profitable.
The question, though, is who is going to continue to pay for that build-out? Is it big companies like Procter & Gamble? Is it consumers who are going to do this? I mean, my doctor showed me the AI that he's using, and it's incredibly helpful, but there's still a question about whether he's going to pay for it or the company he works for is going to pay for it.
Well, hopefully both. I think there's the consumer part of it. You know, a lot of OpenAI customers are consumers, and they're paying for it. But the thing that's really cool is that the enterprise AI build-out that's happening now, my favorite enterprise AI service is Cursor. Cursor is an AI coder, and every one of our engineers, 100%, is now assisted by AI coders, and our productivity has gone up incredibly. And so you're now seeing enterprise AI companies like Cursor, Open Evidence, I love Lovable. All of these companies are some of the fastest growing companies in the world, and they address enterprise. And so enterprise AI is here.
I wonder how you think about, Jensen, the ultimate destination where all this is actually building for. I don't know, there was a post from David Connie's Sequoia partner this week saying, look, AGI is the only thing that can justify the volumes of capital spending right now in artificial general intelligence. At the same time, many of the model builders and experts are pushing out the date where that maybe is going to be achievable. Meantime, you're talking about annual generations of chips. How fast do they depreciate? We're putting all this capital in these data centers that it's just not clear, like, when we get to the end, or is it just a treadmill?
We are going to have incredibly profitable and incredibly useful AIs long before AGI. And for example, right now, Cursor AI, you know, Cursor's AI software coder is incredibly useful. All of our engineers use it. We have some 40,000 engineers. Almost every one of them are going to use it, and they're loving it. And so
they're using it instead of something else, presumably, right? So these are displacing things.
Yeah, this is a brand new thing.
Yeah.
Remember, AI, unlike previous technologies are tools that humans use. Excel is a tool that humans use. A web browser is a tool that humans use. For the very first time, we have technology that can actually use tools by itself. And so Cursor uses, you know, Visual C++, and and now we have Gemini agents that are able to use the browser and browse for groceries or, you know, destinations, or book travel for you, and it can use tools by itself. So this is really quite an extraordinary thing. This tool users, the tool industry is a few $1 trillion. Tool user industry is $100 trillion, which is the reason why everybody's so excited about the future of technology, because it can augment labor, it can increase.
Your business is crushing it, but unless they've got the right help desk software.
Oh man, it just won't stop.
Your agents can get caught in a whirlpool of tickets.
Labor, it can increase the productivity of labor, and here at NVIDIA, you know, it's increased our productivity tremendously.
You've already said you wish you could have bought more OpenAI and maybe invested more in XAI at this point. That implies that you don't think that this is all redundant. Because a lot of the players, I mean, if I read what Sam Altman says and the message he tries to convey, it's as if they're sprinting to try to stay ahead of everybody else because they think it's not going to be room for everybody necessarily who's trying to do something similar.
I think there's general intelligence, and I think there's specialized intelligence.
Yeah.
We love when I hire engineers, I like them to be generally intelligent, and that's a great thing. But once they come to NVIDIA, we make them highly specialized intelligent, so that they could build things that, you know, NVIDIA needs. And so I think the idea of specialized intelligence versus generalized intelligence will continue to happen. And where the real value for enterprises and companies is specialized intelligence, and where the value for consumers, general intelligence.
Hey, Jensen, let's talk a little bit about capital allocation and how you see that. Just back to those same points, that you wish you had more invested in OpenAI, you wish you had more invested in these other companies that you're kind of taking stakes in, like an XAI. You can do things with your money. You can choose to put it back into R&D. You probably don't need a ton with that right now. You can choose to build the company. You can choose to make acquisitions. You can choose to give shareholders back big dividends, or you can invest it yourself in other companies. And lately, what we've seen is a lot of investing in other companies. Do you have other deals like that planned in the works?
We're always looking for great startups to invest in. One of my favorite ones was CoreWeave.
Right.
My only regret is I didn't invest enough. Yeah. And so, in all of these investments that we've made recently, we've made some really terrific investments, and largely my only regret is that we didn't invest more. These are really special companies, and they're part of our ecosystem, building out the AI infrastructure for the world. And AI is several things. AI is energy, AI is chips, the models, and the applications. And so you could see NVIDIA, and you could look at me working across that entire stack of ecosystems around the world. And we need more energy, we need more chips, we need better models and more models, and we need a lot more applications.
Traders, in this video, we'll walk you through our new AI crypto analysis tool that's revolutionizing how traders analyze.
Everyone's trying to create an app so they'd be, oh, look at my app, I'm going to have an AI. Okay, so to dive back into the financing of the build out for XAI, the way Jansen described it, it's more of an equity stake in XAI. And then XAI is going to lease chip usage to generate their models and to do querying through this special investment vehicle. The investment vehicle has the chips and the servers. And my understanding is XAI is going to rent that usage. That would mean that special vehicle would also be able to gain revenue through using its servers and have access to its servers through third parties. So it seems as though XAI has some equity in this special investment unit. NVIDIA has some equity in this special investment unit. XAI, it's off their balance sheet, and it's off the balance sheet of NVIDIA. Now, from NVIDIA's point of view, they're selling chips to the special vehicle, and they're investing in the special vehicle. So the question is the $2 billion that they invest through the rental income, how much rental income will that special vehicle generate for NVIDIA? Because NVIDIA only has a certain percentage of the special vehicle. If it was for example, if it was $2 billion, if it was $20 billion for the vehicle, special vehicle, and NVIDIA invested $2 billion, they only have 10% of the special vehicle, investment vehicle. So that would mean that they only would get revenue generated from the special investment vehicle 10%. But immediately they'll be able to book revenues of X amount, whatever the cost of the actual servers are. I don't know what the cost of the servers are. So they'll show a blip up in their revenue, but they will also show a expenditure for investing in that vehicle. So let's say that they sell $10 billion worth of chips. Then their net, NVIDIA's net, is $8 billion. So it's a good deal for NVIDIA short term. Long term, they're getting 10% of the rental income. If that's how the deal works. I don't know all the details, but I'm just speculating on how this is structured. So short term, NVIDIA, it's good. Longer term, if the rental income is decent, then NVIDIA is going to be getting rental income from. So they're building out basically what NVIDIA is starting to do with XAI is they're building properties. It's almost like the rental income for houses. They're building properties through servers and through these special vehicles and getting rental income because they know that there are going to be lots of different companies that will need to run their models, run their queries on servers. So XAI needs the servers to build their model, but they also know that these servers could be rented out to smaller companies that need to do inference or to build their own proprietary model. So it's not necessarily a vendor finance. It's a vendor equity. It's a joint venture. It's more of a joint venture in this special vehicle. It's a little different. Short term, it's good for NVIDIA. Long term, it seems like it would be good for NVIDIA because it's getting 10% of the rental income from XAI and any third party that may be using the servers of this special vehicle. This is probably a good deal, actually. All right, with that said, but it is a little weird. You gotta kind of like sit down and really think about it. Because on the surface, it does seem circular. All right, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the cleanse, which is 30 parts per million, or the max 35, which is 35 parts per million. And by taking this every day, you're going to boost up your immune system. Take a teaspoon every day, swish it in your mouth, gargle 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and swallow it. What that will do is improve the health of your oral cavity, your oral pharynx, maintain your mucosal lining, and help with the health of your epithelial cells. Really important. Super important. If you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, take a tablespoon or two a day. Once you start to feel better or everything's all clear, then go back to your maintenance dose. I've been taking Max 35 or Cleanse, or even Max 14, for more than 5 years. So take this to help to boost up your immune system. It helps to slow down the aging process because with a good immune system, you're slowing down the aging process. When you have a bad immune system, you're aging faster. So it's a dual purpose. You're preparing for the fall and the winter season, which will be problematic in the United States. And you're boosting up that immune system and slowing down the aging process in the interim. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Max 35 and Cleanse. Another important supplement to take is magnesium and zinc to boost up that immune system and help with brain function. And like I said, with the brain function, you need to start supplementing and doing a holistic approach to improve neural health. Super important. Vitamin C helps with the immune system, helps with skin, and vitamin C and magnesium helps with brain function. So by taking both the vitamin C and magnesium and the magnesium and zinc, you're boosting up your immune system. This is a great stack, and in the process, you're improving the efficacy of vitamin D3 and improving your brain function. So it's a great way to get healthy. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the magnesium and zinc and the vitamin C.
fight on that question because there are strong arguments on both sides of that one. One side says, look, the FCC might like to do that, but this is Congress's role to ease that 39% U.S. cap. The FCC can't do it itself. I think there's going to be a tough fight on that. The FCC probably can win it, but it's coming.
It just seems kind of silly in the digital world here that there are ownership caps, like for traditional broadcasters, which are fighting for their lives in the world of cord cutting. I mean, the economics seem like, why wouldn't you do it?
That's exactly the case that the National Association of Broadcasters have been pushing with the FCC really for many years, but they've really raised the volume on that argument recently, and it's really resonating with Republicans at the FCC. I think Brendan Carr, the FCC chairman, is really sympathetic to that argument that, look, in this world of all forms of new media online, all the ways that consumers get media today, and most of those are largely unregulated, that the traditional TV broadcast industry would face these strict limits on how many stations they can own in local.
Momentum, acceleration, embrace the pursuit. David Human Chevron Collection.
Sometimes, marketing teams feel like their heads are buried, stuck with search and social, with limited growth.
So, as unrest grips Chicago, FBI Director Casper Patel and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche visited with officers who are facing increasing numbers of threats and attacks. The DOJ charging an alleged gang member in a murder-for-hire scheme, targeting the Border Patrol commander leading the operation Midway Blitz. Joining us now to discuss is Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. So, Deputy Attorney General, thanks so much for joining the program this morning.
Good morning. It's good to be here. Thanks.
So, tell us what's going on the ground. Are these murder-for-hire plots, is this a one-off, or are you seeing this consistently right now at the Bureau?
It's consistent. It's not a one-off, and it's something that the reason why Director Patel and I were in Chicago yesterday was to address the leadership, that the federal law enforcement leadership that's doing everything they can on the ground to stop it. But we have organized efforts by domestic terrorists, and that's what they are, to do things like box in law enforcement's cars where they can't even move. And as we know from arrests that were made this weekend, some of these men and women that are boxing in these federal law enforcement officers are armed with heavy machinery. And so this is not a peaceful protest. And when those words are used, it's a shameful. Because what we have going on right now is literally domestic terrorism in Chicago. And I'll say something else. The reason why Director Patel and I were there yesterday, and the reason why Attorney General Bondi spoke so strongly about it, is because when President Trump said that he would make every neighborhood safe in this country, this is what he meant. And so when you have local leaders, when you have a mayor who is establishing ICE-free zones instead of standing up for federal law enforcement, when you have a governor who is mocking federal law enforcement doing their job enforcing federal law, that's when President Trump, I guarantee you, he will step in, and that's what we're doing.
But Deputy Attorney, what is that? What is an ICE-free zone? This is federal law. This is, I don't have to educate you, the supremacy clause. You have no right to impede federal law enforcement. I know that you heard on the ground, the local cops, they support this because the same people that are doing the gangbanging are part of this same criminal enterprise that are going after ICE and the FBI agents on the ground, right?
Absolutely. I'm going to tell you what it is. An ICE-free zone is a place where you can harbor illegal aliens, and that's a crime, and we're looking into that. And you talk about the Latin Kings member who allegedly he was arrested for putting a bounty on the head of a federal law enforcement officer. That obviously puts law enforcement in danger. But the same, when you're a local leader and you establish ICE-free zones, you are putting law enforcement in danger. When you are a governor and you're mocking and criticizing federal law enforcement, you are putting law enforcement in danger. Attorney General Bondi yesterday at our hearing said something that is so true, and it bears repeating right now, which is that we wish that the leaders in Chicago and the leaders in Illinois would love their city as much as they hate Donald Trump. Because I'll tell you something, Donald Trump loves that city. The reason why our men and women are away from their families and they're putting their lives on the line every day is because of their love for that city and that community. And it's heartbreaking to see what the local leaders are doing in response to this, just because they don't like President Trump.
Yeah, Mr. Deputy Attorney, were you able to get to the bottom of who's told the officers to stand down? You know, as law enforcement, you get a 1033, you show up to back up cops. And it's clear that the local cops want to assist. But who in the leadership sent that call?
We're going to get to the bottom of it, of course. And because you could not be more right. One thing that we learned yesterday is that the local men and women, the men and women on the streets, they want to help. They want to be supporting their fellow officers, which should not be surprising to anybody watching this show. And it's really the leadership, whether that's the leadership of the police department or the mayor or the city council or a combination of all three. We're looking at that. But it's really part of a resistance. Domestic terrorism resistance that we see happening in this country is funded by organizations that just want to harm this country. They're well financed, they're well organized. It is not a coincidence that dozens of armed protesters show up wearing the same clothing with exactly the same black umbrellas. That doesn't just happen by luck of the draw. It happens because there's armed organizations, financial backing. And that's what the Department of Justice is completely committed to uncovering, and that's what President Trump directed us to do, and we are more than happy to do it because it needs to be done.
Well, you also are dedicated to equal application of the law. And former director of the FBI, James Comey, is getting ready to see the other side of the justice system. He's going to be arraigned today. He's facing false statement within the jurisdiction of the legislative branch of the U.S. government and obstruction of a congressional proceedings. Some have criticized this department under your leadership and Pam Bondi's leadership. But is this just equal application of the law?
Of course it is. That's absolutely. When Attorney General Bondi talked about it yesterday, and we say it from every time that we speak at this department, we completely got rid of the weaponization that took place over the past 4 years in this Department of Justice, and now we are applying the law equally to everybody, and that means rooting out corruption. Of course it does, and so yes, Mr. Comey will be arraigned today in federal court in Virginia. Like thousands of individuals in this country every year who are charged with committing crimes, and he's being treated exactly like every other individual in his position.
Time to wrap me, but real quickly, will there be more charges? Because my sources tell me there's still more on Comey, but this is the first step.
Well, I'm not going to talk about ongoing investigations. I know that's not what you're asking me to do, but whether there'll be more charges, I can tell you this: we are not worried about the political blowback, if any, of us doing our jobs. So we will continue to investigate every day. Director Patel, Attorney General Bondi, all of our federal law enforcement are doing, working hard every day to uncover crimes, whether they're taking place today or over the past 4 years.
The Deputy Attorney General for the United States, Todd Blanche. Thank you, sir.
I'm Steve Goosey. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.
So we're going to transition to the French politics. But before we do, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the omega-3. Omega-3 will help to improve your cardiovascular health. It helps to improve your lipid profile by bringing down LDL levels and helping to improve and increase your HDL levels. Omega-3 brings down inflammation, and omega-3 helps to reduce the stickiness of your red blood cells, to reduce overclotting. It's really important to take every day to improve your cardiovascular health. Super important. And Goodnight Formula. Goodnight Formula will help you to get into the 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep. So you detoxify your body. You'll be well rested when you wake up. And you're consolidating memory. If you're sleep deprived chronically, you're increasing the chances of early onset of dementia. It's really important to take every night, drink it with filtered water, to be well rested and improve your neural function. please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Goodnight Formula. And with getting a good sleep, you're slowing down the aging process. So this is part of an anti-aging protocol. And when you have better sleep, you have lower cortisol levels. Lower cortisol levels are good for your immune system. If you have chronic high cortisol levels, that's bad. It does damage to your tissues and is immunosuppressive. So this is another reason why it's important to have good sleep. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Goodnight Formula.
That a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. I'm going to need to know a little more about these birds.
Well, also with me here on set now is our International Affairs Editor, Philip Tell. Philip, I know you were asked this question earlier. What are Sebastian Lecornu's chances of success? I suspect you've adapted your answer a little bit after what he said in the last half hour.
Well, I could adapt it. I think he's trying to put a brave face on things. I think it's pretty unlikely he's going to come out and say, look, no progress has been made. This is all going very badly, and probably by the end of the day, the president will have to take the decision to call early elections. He's trying to put a brave face on it, thinking, okay, we met with the right wing yesterday. We're going to meet with the left wing parties this morning, with the Socialist Party, then with the Communists a bit later on this afternoon, and also with the Greens later this morning, to try to hammer out some kind of an agreement. The problem is that no party has an absolute majority in the National Assembly. That's where this is all coming from, because whatever happens, whoever is elected, whoever becomes prime minister, nominated by the president, they don't have the power to push through reforms that everybody will agree to, and that's why we've seen successive governments collapse, because they're victims of no confidence votes. Sebastian Lecornu is in exactly the same position. Now, what is also difficult here is that whatever is worked out today, whether or not the Socialists and Sebastian Lecornu can agree on a way forward with the Greens and also with the Communists, it doesn't necessarily mean that the whole thing will collapse pretty much afterwards, because there will be a vote of no confidence sparked by the far left of Jean-Luc Mélenchon or the far right of Marine Le Pen, who are not in favour of this government, who are in favour of, on the far left of Jean-Luc Mélenchon, wanting to impeach President Macron, and on the far right to call early legislative elections. So it's going to be difficult for Sebastian Lecornu. Let's say one step at a time. We'll see how this works out today. Then we'll see the reaction from President Macron, and then we'll see what happens in Parliament after that.
Yeah, if there's no agreement tonight, then, Philip, what are the options then for President Macron?
Well, President Macron is, let's put it this way, extremely isolated. It's lonely at the top, but he really is at the top and completely cut off. And even his strong supporters in the past have moved away and even criticised what he's doing. Two of his former prime ministers in the past 24 hours, one of them said he should arrange a budget by the end of the year and then call early presidential elections. And another one, Gabriel Attal, has said he doesn't understand what President Macron is doing. He didn't understand why he dissolved the National Assembly just over a year ago in June 2024, which was a complete disaster for him and his political party. So there is a lot of animosity towards the French president, and that's not helping things. So first point is that he could name another prime minister. He could even keep Sebastian Lecornu if there is an agreement made today. But if that doesn't work out, he could call for a technocrat prime minister, if you like, to take over for the next few months and see if he or she can come up with some kind of working agreement with the different political parties. Second is call legislative elections. That is complicated because there needs to be at least between 20 and 35 days period between the dissolving of Parliament and the holding of those elections to allow the campaign to go forward. And that would mean they would be in November this year. And it would also be the same if there were early presidential elections. Now, President Macron doesn't want early legislative elections because he knows his party is going to do badly. The Socialists don't want early legislative elections because they will do badly too. And I think the right wing feels that they may also get a hammering in those elections. It's going to be good news for the far right of Marine Le Pen. President Macron has always ruled out presidential elections, but he says that he will run his term until 2027 and he is not going to stand down early. And constitutionalists in France have also blown the whistle on this, saying that if Macron were to hand in his resignation, call early presidential elections, that could be bad news for democracy in France, because in the future would open the door to the presidential position becoming more fragile and at the mercy of Parliament. And the president is the one who's the guarantor of the French constitution, the guarantor of French government, and therefore it's not in his interest to stand down early. So all of this is very complicated for him.
Just trying to ask you, Philip, as well, what effect this has had on the French people? What is their impressions, if you like, of politics and the politicians?
Okay, I'll give you three words that I've been hearing a lot in the last 24 hours. One is lamentable, which means lamentable. The other is honteux, which means shameful. And the third one is pathétique, which is pathetic, which is what a lot of French people have been saying about the political situation in this country. I think the big risk here is that people are going to lose their ability to see politics as something that they can depend on. 70% of the French now are calling on Emmanuel Macron to resign, and 80% want early legislative elections. So that says a lot about the feeling about the French presidential and legislative system at the moment. What will President Macron do? Well, we'll find out probably at the end of today, when Sébastien Lecornu goes to see him to say, this is the result of my discussions with the political parties. It's a breakthrough or it's a breakdown. We'll have to wait to see what happens.
Exactly. Philip Taylor, International Affairs Editor, puts a little bit more pessimistic there for us here on France 24. Thanks very much for that.
Alrighty, let's see here. You know, the problem with France is that there's such political instability now, and their indebtedness, that they can be a contagion in the context of the doom loop with the UK and how that may cause disruption in financial markets globally. On top of their inability to respond to the threats from Putin in the Ukrainian war. So the French need to get their act together from a fiscal standpoint, from a political standpoint, and from a geopolitical standpoint in their response to the Ukrainian war. They're slipping into just stupidity. And it's amazing. Okay, what we're gonna do is go to CNN. They're talking about Comey pleads not guilty. But before we do, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get these deodorants. They're for males and females. They're dual purpose. Use it as a daily deodorant, but it'll also help to detoxify your body. They're made from essential oils from the Himalayas, all natural, no aluminum, no baking soda, all natural ingredients. Very important to detoxify your body, so you're improving your immune system and your endocrine system. You can get it in citrus, and you can also get it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. Get a few bars for your household. Use them every day, and it'll help to detoxify your body. Boost up that immune system and help with your endocrine system. Now, for the fall and the winter, and for everyday use, but especially for the fall and winter, go to my store and get the structural nano silver toothpaste. This has no fluoride. This will whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, help with the health of your gum line and reduce inflammation at the gum line. But it will also help to neutralize. And that's going to be really important during the fall and the winter. You're going to need this toothpaste to weather the storm that's coming. It's made from structural nano silver. Please go to my store, get a few tubes of this toothpaste. Be prepared for the fall and the winter. You're going to need it. Another great item to be prepared for the fall and the winter are the lozenges and the drops. You can get it in elderberry zinc. You get 21 in each bag. Get a few bags for your household. The moment you have that throat irritation, take the drops and the lozenges right away to mitigate the problem. Because if it festers, you got a problem. All right. You can also get the drops. The drops are a little bit smaller. You get 100 in each bag. You can get it in honey and lemon, in blueberry, and also in cherry flavor. All right? Get a few bags for your household. Have some at work, have some at home. And if you're around someone that's not feeling well, or you're not feeling well, take them right away. All right? And you'll mitigate the problem. Because if you don't, and it festers, then it's going to take more time to fully heal your body. If you're chronically sick, you age faster. That's a fact. But the problem with the aftershock of 2020 is that we're in the endemic phase now. And if you constantly get pulsed by the natural pathogen, then you are doing further damage to your CD4s, your CD4 positives. These are cells that are really important for your immune system. But if you inhibit them or you prevent them from functioning properly because of the S1 subunit attaching to the TCR, the TCR is the T cell receptor, and activating a pro-inflammatory cytokine storm, over-activating pro-inflammatory cytokines, and preventing the MHC2 from attaching to elicit a proper immune response. Guess what? You're doing damage to the tissues because of the pro-inflammatory response, and you're preventing the immune system to fully activate. Well, you need to mitigate that. And if you constantly get this pulse, then your effective CD4s are going to go down. Well, you don't want to do that. You got to mitigate it right away. But it also means that you don't hide underneath your bed. It also means that you still have an active life, but you just have to be more vigilant. And you're vigilant by taking certain types of things and doing certain types of precautions that mitigates the exposure. Now, people would say, well, what about the inoculation? Well, you've got the same problem because the S1 subunit it is in both. So it behooves you to mitigate any throat irritation right away. So your body isn't chronically sick, so you slow down the aging process, and you don't have to worry about the aftershock or the side effects of continuous exposure year after year after year. Because if you let it fester, if the severity is increased, you're increasing the chances of further problems. So it's really important to mitigate. So please go to my store, get the lozenges and drops. The moment you have that throat irritation, take them right away. All right? It's that simple. It's that simple. It's not complicated.
Breaking news just minutes ago, former FBI Director James Comey entered a not guilty plea to federal charges. He is accused of lying to Congress and obstructing a proceeding related to the FBI's investigation of Russian meddling in the 2016 election. Comey was charged just days after President Trump publicly called on the Justice Department to prosecute him and other political rivals. Back with us is CNN senior justice correspondent Evan Perez and CNN senior legal analyst Ali Koenig. But first, I want to go to crime and justice correspondent Caitlin Poland. You were inside that courtroom. Take us inside the hearing, Caitlin.
Well, Pam and Wolf, we had Jim Comey sitting in the middle of his two lawyers on one side, and Lindsay Halligan, the U.S. attorney, sitting at counsel's table in the middle of two line attorneys from the Justice Department in the courtroom. You don't often see that. The U.S. attorney herself in the courtroom looking at the judge, shaking her head yes every time the judge was asking questions of the government. And actually, the way that the judge spoke to the government is something that you don't see very often in a case like this either. We did get a trial date. That trial date is going to be January 5th, so that's less than 3 months from today. That's very fast, and the judge made clear he thinks that there will be no delays and that if there needs to be a resolution, even if the government thinks there's classified information in this case, he will resolve it quickly. Some quotes from Judge Michael Nachmanoff. There should be no reason this case gets off track because of the existence of classified information. He also said that it doesn't appear to be an overly complicated case at this time. And then the other thing, Evan, Pam, Wolf, is that Comey's own counsel is saying, let's get it moving. We haven't seen any discovery at all. No evidence yet here. We're ready to go to trial. Let's move it fast. And the prosecutor, when he came up to the judge to speak, not Halligan, a line prosecutor, he said, well, we're still going through classified information and discovery ourselves.
Well, this was a hearing that lasted about 25 minutes. It was a very fast hearing. It was very perfunctory. And one of the things we were waiting for, Caitlin, was the motions that were suggested by the defense that they were going to present to the judge. These are challenges, essentially, to have the case, these charges tossed out. And one of the ones we were waiting for was the selective and vindictive prosecution, and also possibly the appointment of Lindsay Halligan. You'll remember that before this case was brought, the president fired the U.S. attorney, his own appointee, in this office, in part because there was some resistance inside this office to bringing this case, and then he appointed Halligan. And so the question has been whether Halligan is legally appointed, because the previous occupant of the office has served the 120 days, which is the limit that he is allowed to serve. So the question is whether the judge will hear that. What did you hear in court?
Yes, so the judge did set a date to hear arguments on that. It's going to be in November. That's whenever the meaty arguments will be in this case, where Comey's team will try and attack the prosecution themselves, saying that it's been vindictive, it's been selective, the case should be thrown out, and that Lindsay Halligan shouldn't have a role to play. There's also going to be a separate set of arguments, a separate set of motions from the defense, another round of attempts for them to get the case dismissed or cut back. And those, Comey's attorney Pat Fitzgerald indicated, they're going to be just as much of an attack of the process of the Justice Department.
Pat Fitzgerald saying something about that there was outrageous government misconduct in this case. Again, referring to the president, we've talked so much about how this extraordinary role that President Trump has played in this case, not only posting those social media posts calling for the case to be brought, but of course repeatedly commenting, something that is very unusual in these cases, and clearly it's going to play a big role in this trial going forward.
And Evan, it's now before the judge on the record. Pat Fitzgerald standing at the podium, you'll see in the court transcript, says, our view is the prosecution was brought at the direction of President Trump.
Back to you, Pam and Wolf.
All right, I want to just quickly ask Caitlin, I take it that the judge did not ask for Comey to be detained while he awaits trial. Is that right?
That's correct. So he's being released just on his signature alone. That's a personal recognizance bond. He was never under arrest. He was summoned to come to court today, and that's how it'll work going on from here. He's being ordered by the judge. You've got to come back for all of these additional appearances, and right now there's only 2 other hearings on the calendar at this time. One in November, one in December, for the government to argue everything to try and get this case tossed. We'll get the rulings in writing from the judge. And then there's a trial date, which they say it will only take 2 to 3 days to get this through a trial. And this is a court that moves fast.
Caitlin, very quickly, if he's convicted on these 2 felony charges, how much time in jail potentially could Comey face?
Well, the maximum for these 2 counts that he faces, it's a 5-year maximum prison sentence. That is extremely unlikely. Essentially, no one gets that. And Comey would be, if he were to be convicted, a first-time offender. There's also a fine that would come with a sentence, but there's a lot of different options, and probation would always be one. We often are not talking about custodial sentences when it comes to something like this, a false statement charge.
All right, Caitlin, thank you very much. In court here, Wolf and Pamela.
Yeah, it really is. And there's so much about this that's unusual. I'm going to bring in Ellie now to talk about that and pick apart a little bit about what you all reported. I mean, so first you have the Comey team putting out mid-January for a trial date, and that was fast. Like, wow, that's really fast timeline. Then you have the judge saying, actually, let's do even earlier in January. And then you have the judge predicting it'll be just 2 to 3 days.
Okay, a couple remarkable developments here. This trial is going to happen head-spinningly fast. It is 89 days from today, and this is the opposite of the normal dynamic. Usually, defense lawyers want more time. They want more time to prepare. They're not available. Sometimes they want to drag it out for strategic purposes, as we saw with Donald Trump and his prosecutions, for example. Once in a rare while, and we saw this today, you will see a defendant go into court and say, I want my speedy trial rights. I want them now, or as soon as possible. And here we go. We're going to have a trial January 5th. I'm actually, even though this federal district, the Eastern District of Virginia, is known for moving cases quickly, I'm astonished at how quickly this is really going to go. Their typical case takes 7 to 8 months, and here we're talking about just under 3.
What about the 2 to 3 days timeline?
My gosh, very interesting development. So,
All right, team, listen up. There's a national blood shortage. Big 10 schools, how do we get students, fans, alumni to donate? Hit me. Oh, you've emerged. Not
very interesting development. So, first of all, prosecutors generally, federal prosecutors, have a bad habit of over-trying their cases, of spending way too long, of putting in too much extraneous detail. So this tells me 2 things. 1, prosecutors understand they need to be focused here. But 2, the case itself is quite narrow. It really gets back to whether Jim Comey lied when he testified to the Senate that he had not authorized an FBI leak. We talked about this before. We believe who the alleged leaker is, this guy Daniel Richmond. We know that the leaks allegedly were about Hillary Clinton's possession of an email server, but 2 to 3 days is a very short trial, and I think the parties would be well served to stick to that and not drag it out. But look, there's a chance that the government could have gone in there today and prosecutors said, we need 3 weeks to try our case. The fact that it's 2 to 3 days shows that this is extremely narrow. It's based on 1 piece of testimony about 1 fact.
The judge made it clear that he does not want the parties to slow walk the fact-finding process leading up to the trial.
Yeah, so the judge, what he was doing there, Wolf, was anticipating the types of delays that emerge. He didn't want the parties coming back in 3 weeks, and the defense saying the prosecution hasn't given us the discovery, has not given us the information we're entitled to. The judge made a point of saying, I don't think that there's security issues about classified documents because sometimes that can slow cases down. So the judge was signaling this is not what we would call just a hold date or a temporary date, January 5th. This is a hard date, and he was anticipating today some of the speed bumps and saying, we're not doing that. Everyone's going to be on point here. Prosecutors, you're going to turn over the documents you have to. You're going to do it promptly. We're not going to get sidetracked.
And it is notable because when you look back at all the Trump cases, his team was trying to slow roll it, right?
Yeah.
For their own purposes. In this case, Comey's team wants to speed it up.
Important point. We talk about the speedy trial right. That is a constitutional right that belongs to the defendant. And so Donald Trump and many other defendants say, fine, but I don't want a speedy trial. I want a slower trial. Comey wants a speedy trial. Maybe that tells you something about his level of confidence.
Seems to be pretty confident. We'll see what happens. Ellie, thank you very, very much.
All right, let's see here. Let's listen to Senator Kennedy.
Sorry, I just got here.
You'll be having this.
What are you doing?
I mean, you didn't say no.
If the 8 senators who were spied upon sue the hell out of the Department of Justice and the perpetrators involved, will that facilitate their investigation and or doers? I guess what I'm getting to is I don't understand why we don't have a separate hearing. I find this breathtaking.
It's just been 24 hours since the FBI investigated on it. Please give me an opportunity to sort through all this.
Fair enough.
That was Senator John Kennedy pressing for answers on the Arctic frost investigation.
New details are surfacing tonight in the latest example of Biden-era weaponization of government. That former special counsel Jack Smith was tracking phone records of at least 9 GOP senators as part of the January 6th investigation. Joining us now is Louisiana Senator John Kennedy. Thank you, Senator, for coming on tonight. I have my first question. Are you upset that you're not on the list?
Look, when I first heard about the story, I thought it was satire. I thought it was some nonsense on TikTok. I'm appalled. It's unconscionable. It really is breathtaking. This is a special counsel of the Department of Justice who sought and received the phone records of 8 sitting United States senators. The telephone companies just turned them over. We have no idea what the predicate was, why the FBI and the Justice Department and Mr. Smith were asking for the records. We only found out about it because of a whistleblower. I'm shocked that Smith. I thought he was smarter than this. I mean, I've got rocks in my driveway that are smarter than this.
Is he in your book? Is he in your upcoming book?
No, he should be. Look, I want to have a separate hearing. I want to call him to testify. I'd like the Attorney General Garland to come testify. I think we need to hear from former Director Chris Wray. Mr. Smith may plead the Fifth Amendment. If I were he, I probably would, because this is serious as 4 heart attacks and a stroke. This is the sort of thing that happens in a country whose Powerball jackpot is 287 chickens and a goat. This doesn't happen in America.
Well, sadly, Senator, it seems like it does. And, to President Trump's credit, he has long called out the weaponization of government, and in particular, the FBI. And I wonder, doesn't this just prove that what he's been saying all along is very much right?
Well, yes, it proves it in spades. And they hid it all. Once again, we found out about this from a whistleblower. But they haven't heard the end of it. Now the FBI and DOJ is going to investigate. But they can get the facts for us within 4 weeks. And if they decide to prosecute, we may have to back off in the Senate Judiciary Committee. But if they don't, I want to hold a special hearing. I want to issue a subpoena to Mr. Smith, to former Attorney General Garland, former Director Chris Wray. We're going to get to the bottom of this. And I can promise you this, I've talked to all 8 of the senators. You're going to see some civil lawsuits filed, particularly against these telephone companies who just willingly turned over the records without trying to quash any subpoena that they got.
But so far, Senator, my understanding too is that it doesn't just stop with your fellow senators and the congressmen. It's also 92 Republican-linked groups that were also looked into by Jack Smith, as well as Turning Point USA, the organization that was founded by the late Charlie Kirk. So it seems like the inquiry knew no bounds.
Well, we're going to find out. We are, and I'm looking to the Department of Justice and FBI to do that. And I'm not telling them whether to prosecute someone or if someone, it ought to be this person or that person. I'm telling them to follow the law. Follow the law. And I want to know why Jack Smith thought that he could go seek the phone records of 8 sitting United States senators. I want to know.
Yeah, Senator, we're going to stay in contact with you over the next couple of weeks about this. I do want to talk about your new book, because it feels like it's kind of the preface for this whole idea, how to test negative for stupid and why Washington will never win. Tell us about that.
Well, if you want to understand why we're in lockdown, if you want to understand why an attorney from DOJ could get sitting or existing phone records for senators, my book will explain it. It's a story book, not a policy book. I use stories to explain policy. I wrote the book to explain to the American people why in Washington, D.C., normal is just a setting on the clothes drive.
And I understand that it's both against Democrats and Republicans. You didn't pick a side.
I didn't pick a side. I name names. I tell stories. Some of them are funny. Some of them are bizarre. All of them are true.
Well, congratulations on the book. #1 bestseller on Amazon Books today. I checked that.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the resveratrol. Resveratrol is a very important supplement to add to your anti-aging protocol. It'll help with youthful gene expression, help the health of your mitochondria so you have more energy, reduce stress because it soaks up free radicals. It's an antioxidant. It helps to get rid of cells that are in senescence. This is very important to take. It stacks well with C60, ubiquinol, NAD+, clarity factor. It's a great supplement that you should add to your health protocol to slow down the aging process. Myotrol. If you're 40 years of age or older, you should be taking Myotrol. It has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help with gene expression for building muscle. When you get older, you have your genes methylate. Your epigenetic profile changes through age, and it's just harder to gain and maintain muscle. Well, if you do some resistance training, proper diet and exercise, and take Myotrol, you will gain muscle and maintain muscle and improve the health of your mitochondria so you have the energy to maintain that muscle. Myotrol is super important to take. And by doing resistance training and taking the proper supplementation like Myotrol, then what's going to happen is that you're going to have more vitality. And so when you get into your geriatric years, you're going to be more active. If you lose a lot of muscle between age 40 to, let's say, age 65, do you think that you're going to be as healthy at age 65 versus someone that maintains their muscle mass and increases their bone density? Of course, you're going to be healthier when you get into your geriatric years if you do the proper protocol. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Myotrol. Myotrol also stacks well with gladiator barley to build muscle. So please go to my store and get the Myotrol. Alrighty. All right, what else is going on in the world? Let's listen into this surveillance by Jack Smith.
Did you know your small contribution to a candidate can have 8 times the impact? Small change can lead to big change in New York City. Make your contribution count.
What we no longer need can bring joy to others. Carrot, your local secondhand marketplace.
But first, there's this bombshell, a revelation about the Biden-era FBI. Former special counsel Jack Smith was allegedly tracking the private communications and phone calls of 9 Republican senators, surveilling senators as part of his probe into January 6th. A declassified document released by Senator Chuck Grassley shows that Jack Smith and his so-called Arctic Frost team were tracking Senators Lindsey Graham, Marsha Blackburn, Ron Johnson, Josh Hawley, Cynthia Lummis, Bill Haggerty, Dan Sullivan, Tommy Tuberville, and Mike Kelly. And they were understanding and following who they were calling, when they were calling them, the times, the contact. FBI Director Kash Patel recently finding this September 2023 document called Cast Assistance, which refers to the agency's cellular analysis survey team. Joining me now is Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson. Senator, thanks so much for being here. You are one of those Republican senators that was being surveilled. You were briefed about this yesterday by the Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino. What have you learned? What can you tell us?
Good morning, Maria. Well, you know, in my 10 years of investigating the FBI, dating back to the exoneration memo of James Comey for Hillary Clinton, the results of all those investigations, this doesn't surprise me. It should shock, it should outrage every American. Quite honestly, by now, it should be obvious to every American that it's not the Republicans that are a threat to our democracy. It's President Obama, it's President Biden, it's the radical leftists that have served and support them. This is outrageous, what has happened. We did not learn much. I appreciate the fact that the director and Dan Bongino notified us of this and briefed us. What we know is that this isn't exactly like the partisans who remain in the Justice Department and the FBI are voluntarily coming forward and confessing their crimes. This just happened to surface when the individual who initially got these records, in applying for recertification to this CAST team, this is an accomplishment. I'm apparently proud of the fact that this particular agent subpoenaed 8 members of the Senate and 1 House member. So again, that either shows just a complete lack of knowledge on the part of that particular agent, or such a cavalier attitude inside the agencies that there's no big deal of just totally violating the separation of powers here and surveilling members of Congress and busting that separation of powers. I mean, this is, again, it should shock and outrage every American. Probably about shock and outrage about half of us. The other half are, again, just living in the daydream, quite honestly, believing what the Democrats tell them.
Well, I mean, it's unbelievable how the names that were being surveilled. I mean, you were investigating the FBI. So it's wrong. It's completely unconstitutional and criminal. But you were investigating. What was Marsha Blackburn doing? What was Lindsey Graham doing? How did they choose which senators to surveil?
That's what we need to find out. Again, it's a very odd group of people that they pulled their phone records on.
Right.
We don't know predicate. There's no chain of approval on this thing. Apparently, they evaded the normal chain of approval to do something like this by saying that we're not a target or a subject of the investigation. So using a grand jury, they apparently avoided an awful lot of the very rigorous approval that would normally be required if you're going to subpoena a member of Congress that was a target or that was subject to investigation. So again, there are many tricks that these partisans can play to do things that I believe are unconstitutional. But we need to get fully to the bottom of this. Senator Grassley and I have already requested all the files, all the records on Arctic frost. This is going to rededicate ourselves to making sure we get it. If some of this information is being held because of the secrecy requirements of grand jury information, we need to have a judge unseal those records. We need to understand exactly what happened, exactly who was involved, and make sure the American public understands what happened. Expose it.
Momentum, acceleration, embrace the pursuit. David Yearman Chevron Collection.
Gusto has been named the #1 small business payroll software by NerdWallet and Tech Republic.
Understands what happened.
The problem with the mainstream media, for the last several months is that Trump's always bad. He's authoritarian. There's going to be it's fascist. He's just taking over the government. He doesn't care about the rule of law. Look at this Arctic frost. Arctic frost shows that the Democratic Party are what they're complaining about Trump. They're authoritarian. They have an authoritarian mindset. They're not following the rule of law. They're a party. The Democratic Party is a party of thieves, of mobsters, and they want to destroy this country. How? By eroding God, country, and family, by making our economic prowess weakening our military, and they're using the deep state and the national security state to go after their enemies. And Arctic frost is a perfect example. So is Arctic frost authoritarian? Is it signs of being authoritarian? Is it following the law? Of course not. Of course not. The Biden administration, Biden probably didn't even know about this because he was so brain dead. But the bottom line here is that someone was running the show within the Biden administration, which was probably not Biden. Probably it had tentacles to go into Obama. The Democratic Party needs to be held accountable, and these people that did this, they should be executed for treason.
Oppose this so that the American people really do understand who and what party is the threat to democracy. Here's a hint: it's not Republicans.
And Senator, when you say they were tracking the communication of the phone calls, what specifically did they get? Did they know who you were calling? What specifically does that mean? Tracking the communication and calls, as you know it.
Well, So they got access to our phone records from January 4th to January 7th of 2021. They got who was called, the date and time and length of call. So apparently no content. Again, but that's serious enough. I mean, that is snooping on a separate branch of government. It should not have happened, and we need to understand exactly who's involved and exactly how this all happened, how it all got approved, and who all in the end knew about it. It sounds like people pretty high up had to know about this, but again, I can't tell you that right now. I do know that Dan and Cash are.
I'm telling you. Someone was running the show in the Biden administration, and I'm sure that this thing goes to Obama. The bottom line is this. It's not just finding out. It's holding the people accountable to make sure this never happens again. Because the administrative state, the deep state, is out of control. They're out of control. And these people that were using lawfare and using the system against their political enemies, they need to be held accountable. And if found guilty, they need to be executed. Because this is treasonous. What the hell is going on here? Because these are the same people that tried to overthrow the election.
Be looking into this, but again, it's also important to understand this is they have a significant challenge inside the FBI and Department of Justice. These people aren't coming out and providing this information. It's like pulling teeth trying to get this information, and it's only through whistleblowers and just this the very strange set of circumstances where somebody's trying to recertify for this task team that this thing surfaced.
And when you say people high up had to know about, you mean Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, and Lisa Monaco, the Deputy Attorney General.
Yep.
Well, it's interesting that Lisa Monaco, a month and a half later, changed the procedure of the Department of Justice in terms of how these kind of records could be obtained. So she must have found out about this. Realized that again, I'm speculating here, but it's just the timeline is interesting. President Trump gets in. The Mar-a-Lago raid occurs in August of 2022. He gets indicted in around August of 2023. We get our records pulled in September 2023 and November of 2020.
People need to wake up. This is bigger than Watergate. When you look at the whole landscape of what was going on with the Democrat Party going all the way back to 2016, this is bigger than Watergate. Bigger. If you have a friend that's a Democrat, and they're not being honest and looking at this and saying, their party is a party of thievery and collusion and obstruction, then they're not being honest. And they're part of the problem. You need to push back. Conservatives need to push back and say, you know what? You're a Democrat, and are you going to fix the problem and stop your party from overthrowing the government? Or are you going to hide? Or are you going to pretend that it's the Republicans and it's Trump that's the authoritarian? You need to push back. The Democratic Party has fucked up this country.
The Deputy Attorney General, Lisa Monaco, changed the procedure on how these kind of records could be obtained from a member of Congress. So somebody eventually found out what happened here, but from my standpoint, this is Jack Smith, I think a complete rogue prosecutor, a extreme partisan, but again, appointed by the Biden administration to conduct lawfare against President Trump. Once they had him indicted, once they got targeted, they went on a fishing expedition to other members of Congress, and I can't really describe what they're looking for.
Unbelievable. And, when you mention this timeline, it's very important now because I do believe that the DOJ is going to be bringing charges of conspiracy as it relates to the Russia collusion story. And Devin Nunes told me that includes the Mar-a-Lago raid, which Merrick Garland and Lisa Monaco had to know all about. And he wants to know, what was the origins of that raid? What specifically were they looking for? Was it this, which I have now because it was declassified, the majority staff report on the intelligence community assessment of Russia's campaign targeting the 2016 election? More on that coming up. But look, Chuck Grassley also revealed the FBI's Arctic Frost probe investigating dozens of Republican entities, including the late Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA. Your colleague, Missouri Senator Eric Schmidt, joined me on Sunday Morning Futures. Here's what he said about that. Watch.
It was a coordinated campaign.
Right now at Raymore Flanagan Sleep Center, save up to $600 on Stearns & Foster adjustable sets and more.
It was a coordinated campaign by the FBI to go after January 6th, any Republicans. They had wide-ranging subpoena power that was likely unconstitutional to go after Charlie Kirk's organization, Turning Point USA. I was on the executive board of the Republican Attorneys General Association at the time. They were going after that organization. Really, this massive sweep to try to pull in the Republican apparatus for criminal prosecution. And so you put that in the context of what happened in 2016 with the Russiagate and everything that they did there and everything kind of trying to sideline the presidency there. You then go into 2020 with the FBI involved with the Hunter Biden laptop, trying to debunk that or pre-bunk that. So this is part and parcel of an FBI that was corrupted by a lot of people, and there needs to be accountability.
Now, at 9 a.m. this morning, there will be Chuck Grassley in the Senate hearing, and his opening remarks we want to listen for to see if there's new information about what they did to people like Peter Navarro as well, Senator. Mm-hmm. But what I want to get out here is whether or not we are going to see new charges against people like Jim Comey, John Brennan on conspiracy, because that's what Kevin Nunes said took place here. A conspiracy beginning with Russia collusion onto the Mar-a-Lago raid, onto the January 6th cover-up. Watch this. He joined me on Sunday. Watch.
It was all designed to target and take down one of your political enemies, so much so that they actually raided his home, a private home of a former president at that time. If you have intelligence agencies that are effectively working with the fake news, working with nonprofits, all to benefit one political party. And that's what you've had. So it was a conspiracy. It is a conspiracy. And so whether or not you can make those charges, I'm not a lawyer, never been a prosecutor, but I've done a lot of these investigations. And to me, really what matters is the court of public opinion. What matters are the statutes and law. And I would, from my vantage point, it's pretty clear that there was conspiracy on a number of fronts. Most importantly, I think lying and misleading, I think that's a key word, misleading Congress and other investigations. One was in August of 2016 in the Obama White House with Biden and a bunch of other cast of characters there, including Comey, including Brennan, where they are told by Brennan that, hey, there's a hoax going on. That's my word. They knew that in August of 16. Now, how is it possible that all of these cast of characters that were interviewed by multiple, not only the House Intelligence Committee, but also in the Senate and Horowitz and all the way to Durham, they just had amnesia, just forgot about this. They all those years went by and they don't remember that this was a cover-up for the Hillary Clinton email campaign? Nonsense.
So what do you think, Senator? What about this conspiracy charge coming?
I think it absolutely was conspiracy. I think crimes were committed. What they're going to be able to successfully be convicted of, I can't tell you, but just look at the damage they have done to our democracy. I mean, Russia, China, they couldn't even begin to hope to do as much damage as people like Comey and Clapper and Brennan and that whole cast of characters did. It's important to understand, the only reason we got that list of 100 Republican organizations that they targeted was because of a whistleblower. And we got this information because somebody applied for a recertification on the CAS team. The point I'm trying to make is the partisans, the partisan deep state actors that were engaged in this, many of them are still in the Department of Justice. They are still in the FBI. They are going to continue to frustrate and cover up their own actions, and they're going to cover up for these other people as well. We have an enormous problem. Cottrell, Dan Bongino, Pam Bondi have an enormous challenge because, for one thing, Chuck Schumer has basically blocked confirmations, but all the lawfare has been conducted. For example, Judge Troops in Wisconsin, he's in about $1 million in legal fees because he represented the president for 2 months, and they're trying to destroy him personally. So you don't have to do that to too many people to make it very difficult then to staff the Department of Justice and the FBI with people that are loyal to this president. So again, the left is relentless. They are incredibly effective. We're just seeing the tip of the iceberg of the damage they have done to these institutions and to America. No, they're criminals. They need to be fully prosecuted. I'm not sure what they can be convicted of, particularly not in courts here in D.C. The jury pool is going to be heavily Democratic. So no, we've got a real problem. The first step in accountability is we need to expose this. And I want to work closely with Pat Cottrell, Dan Bongino, Pam Bondi. I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I've been targeted before. I know I'm a thorn in their side. I have no idea why these other senators were targeted. And we'll use that term. Okay, we were targeted by Jack Smith. I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I don't know. It's going to be difficult to do so. Again, the deep state does not give up the secrets easily, even when you're in charge of it.
Unbelievable. I mean, it's just extraordinary. The limits that they have gone and will go to stop President Trump, who was an outsider coming in, and it was because they did not want their grip on power loosened in any way. They knew an outsider, a businessman like Donald Trump would do just that because he told everybody what he was going to do.
They still have a lot of power. They're still trying to maintain that grip. We got to loosen that grip.
No, you need to hunt them down, prosecute them, and hopefully they are convicted of treason. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the gladiator barley, because it looks like we're going to civil war against the deep state. You're going to need to get some muscle. So what you should do is take this high-density protein, and it's dual purpose. This is not like whey protein and that garbage that other people use. This is very high quality, extremely high quality, and it's dual purpose. You take it, you mix it with soft foods, filtered water, or smoothie, or even with milk. Do resistance training, and you're going to gain muscle. This stacks well with Boomer Boost and also Myotrol. But this will also detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals. So you're going to slow down the aging process. By bringing down inflammation and detoxifying your body, you're helping your immune system, your endocrine system, your vascular system, even your brain function. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get this very high quality barley. This is not regular barley. This is special stuff. So please go to my store and take it every day and get healthy and detoxify your body and bring down that inflammation and slow down the aging process. Another great supplement that's a powder is the collagen. Collagen is a dual purpose. Taking the collagen every day is going to improve your skin, your nails, your hair, your joint health, your cartilage, your musculature, and even your bone density. Take it every day. Slow down the aging process. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and stack it with the gladiator barley. So you're helping your skin, your musculature, your bone health, your cartilage. And with the gladiator barley, you're building muscle, you're detoxifying your body, you're bringing down inflammation, and you're soaking up free radicals. This is a powerful stack right here. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and use discount 5. You get $5 off any order. It's all caps, discount 5. $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. And stock up on the supplements that I have that will allow you to be prepared for the fall and the winter season. You need to be prepared because the data is coming out that it's going to be problematic. This season is going to be problematic in the United States. So just be prepared, boost up that immune system so you can mitigate the problems. All right, let's listen into more of this Arctic frost.
A trusted strategic partner already by your side. Imagine that. We can.
Grip, stability, precision. That's the essence of driving. Lawfin. I have to say, I'm struck by the degree of the cognitive dissonance that I hear on the other side. It really is. I mean, I'm used to sort of the political debates and arguing in court and all those sorts of things. But to hear the other side of the dais talk about weaponization is truly shocking, given what we know now. There is a big difference between what happened under the Biden regime and the weaponization, and then holding those people accountable. That is not weaponization. If that doesn't happen, this will happen all over again.
Yep. Yep.
And that's Missouri Senator.
You got to hunt them down. You got to hunt them down. You got to charge them. You need to prosecute them. And if found guilty, they need to be executed. Because what they were doing was overthrowing the electoral process. The deep state thought that they superseded the Constitution. The deep state wanted to nullify the will of the people. It is the obligation and the right of the legislative branch to investigate and hold all of these motherfuckers accountable.
A fiery hearing on Capitol Hill yesterday. Attorney General Pam Bondi accusing the Biden administration of weaponizing government agencies for Operation Arctic Frost. This is a 2022 FBI probe into dozens of Republican entities, all surrounding the results of the 2020 election. New FBI documents reveal that former special counsel Jack Smith tracked the private communications and phone calls and logs of at least 8 Republican senators during his January 6th investigation. Joining me now is the man himself, Missouri Senator Eric Schmitt. Senator, thanks very much for being here. That was great yesterday, what you said during the hearing, and you said this is 1,000 times worse than Watergate. Walk us through what has taken place here.
Well, I think it's important, Maria, to kind of walk through how we even got to Arctic Frost and what it means and sort of the continuum of this corruption. So you've got in 2016, Hillary Clinton working with the Soros organization to create this fake story that Russia somehow was preferring President Trump or some sort of Russian asset. They then feed that to the intelligence agencies. You've got the Steele dossier that then becomes something that Barack Obama uses to spy on President Trump when he was a candidate. President Trump wins. They can't believe it. They keep this thing going. They knew it was fake. They laundered this thing, and then it becomes part of this effort to sort of sideline a presidency in 2016 and 2020. Then you've got the FBI, of course, then these deep staters still involved, pre-bunking the Hunter Biden laptop stories. The American people don't know about that kind of corruption. Then Biden gets in, and 3 days later, they begin this vast censorship enterprise I talk about in my book, and we've talked about on your show before. They also then, as part of this Arctic Frost, start spying on United States senators. They go after organizations like the one I was on at the time, the Republican Attorneys General Association, the Republican Governors Association, Turning Point, conservatives. This was a Soviet-style effort to sort of round up political enemies.
Yep.
Then, of course, President Trump announces in 2022.
Now think about that. Think about what you just said. I mean, think about the Democratic Party. How do they think? You got ultra liberals that are pushing fucking Marxism in the schools. They start to rise up in the political world. They start running states and are running cities, major cities like Boston or maybe New York, pushing Marxism. And then they have a hold on the national security state that goes all the way back to the Clintons, trying to nullify the will of the people, thinking that they're above the law, that they're above the Constitution, that they know better. They're pushing a one-party government where no one's accountable, that there's no balance of powers. And they targeted their enemies by weaponizing the Department of Justice. These people need to be held accountable, every single fucking one of them. And this is not just Jack Smith. This is CIA. This is FBI. This goes all the way to the district attorneys, like Loretta James. There's a mosaic here. Every single one of these people need to be held accountable. Because if we don't have a constitution.
And at that point, it's all hands on deck. Fani Willis as chief deputy meets with White House counsel. Alvin Bragg hires the number 3 person of DOJ. Jack Smith, the henchman himself, is brought on to go after and get Trump. And they tried to bankrupt him and put him in jail for the rest of his life. That's the story. And so this thing has been going on for the better part of a decade. We continue to learn more, but it really is shocking, Maria. I know that, like, in this 24-hour news cycle, sometimes we can get numb to this stuff. We've never seen anything like this. There's never been anything like this in the history of the country.
This is bigger than Watergate. Bigger than Watergate. So if you have a friend that is a Democrat, you need to push back. If you're a Democrat, you need to really look in the mirror and say, do you want to follow the Constitution? Are you for rule of law? Or are you part of the problem? Because if you're part of the problem, then the conservative movement is going to run you over.
In government after their political foes, the people that they called, deplorables. Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama calls them bitter cleaners. Joe Biden calls them trash. It wasn't just about Trump. It was mostly about Trump, but then it's about Republicans and half the country. So there has to be some real accountability.
It's absolutely extraordinary. And one thing that you missed, I think, in that is that little cozy meeting that Bill Clinton had with Loretta Lynch on the Almanac in Arizona. Was that part of what is looking more and more like a conspiracy, which is what Devin Nunes told me on Sunday.
This goes all the way. This thing goes all the way to the Clintons and to Barack Obama. Because they were using the deep state as a means to control and to circumvent the balance of powers that are guaranteed in our Constitution. So if you're a pro-constitutionalist, you can't let this happen. You cannot let this happen.
Hey, watch. Said to us Sunday, watch.
It was all designed to target and take down one of your political enemies, so much so that they actually raided his home. A private home of a former president at that time. If you have intelligence agencies that are effectively working with the fake news, working with nonprofits, all to benefit one political party. And that's what you've had. So it was a conspiracy. It is a conspiracy. And so whether or not you can make those charges, I'm not a lawyer, never been a prosecutor, but I've done a lot of these investigations. And to me, really what matters is the court of public opinion. What matters are the statutes and law. And I would, from my vantage point, it's pretty clear that there was conspiracy on a number of fronts. Most importantly, I think lying and misleading, I think that's a key word, misleading Congress and other investigations. One was in August of 2016 in the Obama White House with Biden and a bunch of other cast of characters there, including Comey, including Brennan, where they are told by Brennan that, hey, there's a hoax going on. That's my word. They knew that in August of 16. Now, how is it possible that all of these cast of characters that were interviewed by multiple, not only the House Intelligence Committee, but also in the Senate and Horowitz and all the way to Durham, they just had amnesia, just forgot about this. They all those years went by and they don't remember that this was a cover-up for the Hillary Clinton email campaign? Nonsense.
So I wonder, Senator, if they're going to be able to get away with it again by just saying, well, I forgot that it was a cover-up for Hillary Clinton's emails. I mean, CIA Director John Ratcliffe released new documents, as you know. They show that in 2015, then Vice President Joe Biden blocked dissemination of intelligence which showed Ukrainian officials were concerned with his family's business ties. So, he tried to block the intelligence from coming out. People were speculating, oh, there's corruption here. Why does the Biden family keep taking money from adversaries? Was that part of the conspiracy? And do you think the DOJ will be able to prove conspiracy?
Well, let's take those as two separate issues for now. The first one, you mentioned the Ukrainian issue and the Bidens. You got to remember also, President Trump was impeached for asking questions about something that is absolutely true. which was even the Ukrainians with their intelligence and our intelligence verified, they thought there was something wrong in America with Biden trying to cover up this intelligence report about the potential corruption with Hunter Biden, as Biden was trying to cover up when he was vice president. But then also this conspiracy. I think this is important to note. There's a few things going on here at the same time. First is it true that statute of limitations may have run on some of the stuff that began in 2016? Yes. Now, some of that stuff happened within the last 5 years, less of an issue. However, it doesn't, as conspiracy, you don't have the same statute of limitations issues. Like if you are part of the conspiracy at mile marker 1, let's say Russiagate, and then you are no longer in the administration, you can take an exit ramp in mile marker 3, okay? You are still liable for that conspiracy at mile marker 10. And we're at mile marker 10, Maria. And I think that's the most likely place you're going to get indictments is this conspiracy among a number of people to perpetrate a fraud on the United States of America, the people, and also a candidate. And they continued it on through multiple administrations, through the deep state, and the lies are so thick here that I think we need to continue to have more investigations here in Congress, but ultimately there need to be indictments.
Just extraordinary. And we should point out that all the while, they were saying President Trump was a threat to democracy, which is, I mean, to our faces, even going through all of that, what you just did.
See, everything that the Democratic Party has done, everything that the Democratic Party has done since 2016 has been just a projection. They were trying to project what really is themselves, which really are themselves, onto the face of Orange Man bad. Trump's bad. The Republican Party bad. They're authoritarian. They don't believe in the rule of law. But the reality of the situation is what they were saying was about themselves. They were projecting. Now, that's a problem just from a psychological point of view. But the thing is that what they did and this mosaic of using the deep state and weaponizing the judicial system and using lawfare and doing the surveillance on members of Congress and senators. What? This is bigger than Watergate. Bigger. And covered more years. I'll tell you. This country needs to hold these people accountable. And I'll tell you, I wouldn't be surprised that part of this cabal is tied into the release of the pathogen of 2020.
It's day 8 of the government shutdown. The Senate expected to hold another critical vote this morning on both funding proposals. What are you expecting from this vote? Do you feel that maybe you'll get any Democrats to work with the Republicans to get the CR through, the continuing resolution?
I hope we can get 5 more. We only need 5 more. This is a clean funding bill. They want to fund all sorts of health care for illegal immigrants. But the fact of the matter is we've offered a clean CR to fund the government to give us more time to do appropriations bills. The other thing to keep in mind here, on the 18th of this month, there's a No Kings rally in Washington. It's my contention that the Democrats are so scared of this radical, or many of them have been captured by the far left radical base, but some of them are so scared of that rally that they may hold out even for another 10 days or 2 weeks. But here's the truth, is that the Republicans have offered a solution, fund the government to give us time to work on appropriations bills. That's how we normally get out of these things, but the Democrats, I think, are so scared of people like AOC and others that it's just not in the cards right now. So I expect the vote will go down again, but the Republicans are pretty united here.
Well, look, we've got to point out that even though you're in a shutdown, you and your colleagues have worked through it. And yesterday you confirmed more than 100 of President Trump's nominees, including ambassadors and senior officials. Tell me about this, because the Democrats were trying to stonewall the nominee process as well, right?
That's right. And we finally broke through that. It was unprecedented, Maria. Normally, the general counsel for the Department of Transportation isn't filibustered. To put that in perspective, Clarence Thomas wasn't filibustered. We got 52 votes, but he wasn't filibustered. So it's an unprecedented level of obstruction, but it gets to the heart of the matter, which is what this conspiracy was all about. And then this, they never forgave President Trump for coming down the escalator and winning. They never forgave the American people, the electorate, for electing him. And they're in the death throes of this party now that again has been totally radicalized, and they can't reason with the American people. So all they know is to fight Trump and to grandstand and not govern. And so Republicans are going to hold firm here.
Well, I didn't see your name on the list of senators surveilled, but I was.
Well, I was the chairman of the Republican Attorneys General Association, which was also part of this this broadcast. So I wasn't in the Senate yet when Arctic Frost was going on, but I was an AG. And again, the AG Association was part of it. So was the Governor's Association.
This is huge. This is huge. It's way, way bigger than Watergate. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the zeolite. This will bind to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals. You take 3 small drops underneath your tongue, drink the filtered water, and it'll allow you to urinate those toxins and chemicals and heavy metals out every, about 6 to 8 hours or so. But it's important to take it every day. And when you do that, you're improving your immune system and your endocrine system, even your brain function. Because if you have lots of chemicals and toxins and heavy metals, you're affecting your bodily systems. But if you're detoxing, then you're helping with your kidneys and your liver and your brain function, your immune system. Super important. And you're bringing down inflammation in the process. Because if you have a lot of chemicals and toxins that are in your body, you're in a pro-inflamed state. So that's bad. Also, this stack that I'm going to show you is dual purpose. Turmeric is really important to soak up free radicals and bring down inflammation. That's going to help with the immune system, also the cardiovascular system, and your brain function. Because by bringing down that inflammation, you're reducing plaque formation, and you're keeping those neurons healthy. Because a chronic inflamed state will degrade the health of the neuron. Lignans will help with your endocrine system and your immune system, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals. It has the same benefits as the turmeric, and it's synergistic. Ashwagandha root helps to control your cortisol levels and your blood glucose levels. When you control those, you're helping your immune system and you're helping your vascular system. Now, when you stack these together, it's a dual purpose. You're helping your cardiovascular system, so you're reducing plaque formation. You're bringing down inflammation at the cerebral level, so you're helping with your neurons, and you're boosting up your immune system, which is something that you really need, especially this fall and winter. So please go to my store and get the turmeric, the lignans, and the ashwagandha, stack them together and take them every day. Super important, especially for this fall and winter. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. So let's listen to Hugh Hewitt about Arctic frost.
Lead investigative journalist over at the Washington Examiner, Fox News contributor extraordinaire. Byron, how big of a deal, how big of an earthquake is Operation Arctic Frost?
It's a big deal. But Wayne called me up a couple minutes ago. He said, now this really is unprecedented, isn't it? And I said, no, it's actually not. I do remember a story happened in 2014. John Brennan, such a great guy, who was head of the CIA at the time, had to apologize. Dianne Feinstein was the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee because the CIA spied on the Intel Committee. They tapped the computers of the staff of the Intel Committee.
All right, I think this is unprecedented. I'll tell you what. You're right about Feinstein. They went after staff. Snooping on senators' phone calls, 8 of them? I've never heard. We went after bad guys before. Wilbur Mills got, thrown in jail. We went after people with money in their freezer. I can't remember that guy's name. I think he was from Louisiana. But 8 senators and the Republican Attorney General's Association, he's like Beria. Jack Smith is like our own Beria.
It is a huge deal. And, the whole, if you just look at the Trump, the specific indictments of Trump that Jack Smith engaged in, which was the January 20th indictment and the documents indictment. Every story about this said, well, this is a novel interpretation of the law, or these are novel charges that have never been tested before in court. I mean, Jack Smith was just either making things up or stretching the law beyond, its breaking point. So to see this, I have to tell you, it is a huge deal. But I am not surprised by this.
I had a suggestion. I bounced it off Senator Schmidt. I'm going to bounce it off Senator Ernst as well, which is that Leader Thune ought to stand up a select committee like the Watergate Committee and put Cruz and Cotton and Eric Schmidt and Josh Hawley, all our smart lawyers. They're a bunch of them, Mike Lee, I'm forgetting some. Put them on the Republican side. Don't rig it like the J6 committee. Don't, veto whoever the Democrats want to put on there. They get their minority counsel. But grind, beginning with the lowest level secretary in Jack Smith's office, all the way up to Christopher Wray and Merrick Garland, and find out what happened. I think it'd be A, must viewing, and B, we might get some charges out of it. What do you think?
Well, you're right. Do not ever rig a committee again like the January 6th committee. Never, ever, ever. I think it's a good idea because, I was interested. You had Senator Schmidt on earlier, right?
Correct.
And he was saying, well, we think it's the phone logs right now, but we don't really know if it stops at that. And that's a huge difference. A phone log and the actual content of a conversation are two really different things.
Yeah, I'm using the word surveillance because it covers everything. I'm not saying tap.
Right. So, but I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just saying we need to know more about this to be sure that the phone logs were the only thing that happened and other things. I mean, we know that the FBI abused the FISA court in the Trump investigation to get a wiretap and renew a wiretap on an American. And I will tell you, there are members of Congress who were involved in the Trump investigation who did believe that somebody like the FBI, maybe the FBI, was looking at them very closely. Not sure if it was.
Well, now nothing is going to surprise me anymore, Byron. I'm so shocked because I did my time at DOJ in the White House counsel office. No one would ever think of surveilling a senator unless it was abscam, right? Unless someone got caught putting money in their trench coat. Then you have to do it. But even then, you're very careful about it. What's that guy's name? Harrison? He was from New Jersey.
Harrison Williams, I think.
Yeah. And so it happens, but not 8 of them, not on some cooked up deal. And I want to know what Christopher Wray knew. What did Merrick Garland know? And the way you start is at the bottom and you work. There's an Alexander Butterfield out there. Does anyone remember that? You remember Alexander Butterfield?
He was the one who I believe revealed the existence of the Watergate tapes in his testimony to the Watergate.
Sleepy day at the committee.
Previously unknown existence. Yes.
Yeah, and they said, well, we got the taping, and everyone said, what? And it's sort of like this came out last night, and I could not believe it. So what have you heard people say about it inside the Beltway today?
Well, first of all, thanks to Senator Grassley for leading on this. He's done a real big deal about this, and he was the real leader on the Senate side when Devin Nunes was on the House side of the investigation into the Trump-Russia matter. People are appalled, and the only thing the only question there ever is in the first stages of this is, how far did this go? Did they tap these senators? Did they do other things? And did they do this to other people beyond these 8 names that we have right now?
Eric Schmidt told me they did it to RAGA, to the Republican Attorney General's Association, which included Ashley Moody and himself, so it's 10 senators now.
Okay, then the point is, it's just increased by a couple since the earliest reports. So the question is always, is this it, or is there more? And the thing is, when you look, you often find more.
And if you look well, now what usually happens with committees is they grandstand, when in fact, do you remember Iran-Contra, the minority leader, ranking member was Dick Cheney, and he had a lead counsel by the name of Richard Leon, and Dick Leon was a bulldog. He ended up being a federal district court judge, very, very good one, senior status now. They need to hire serious prosecutors here and do it all in the open so that there's a cleansing. Doesn't the FBI need like a car wash?
Yep. Well, they do, and I heard you saying, you had never been a prosecutor, and a lot of senators have never been a prosecutor. They need to get people who actually have been prosecutors. And I absolutely agree with that, because the one thing you have to guard against when you're dealing with the Senate and the House is just the tendency to bloviate of members. And certainly in hearings, if there are public hearings, it's more difficult to get the information to the public, even if they discover the information, in staff.
Remember how they cleared Brett Kavanaugh? They yielded all their time to the lawyer.
Yeah.
And the lawyer. That's how you get someone, and that's how you clear someone. If you yield all your time. Hey, Byron York, thank you. Follow my next at Byron York. Follow me next.
All right, we're gonna play Will Kane's show. Vivek is talking about the Arctic frost issue. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the NAD+. NAD+ is a supplement that will boost up your energy levels through increasing NAD+. And NAD+ helps to repair DNA damage and protect your neurons. This is super important to take to protect the neurons. Take it every day, especially if you're 40 years of age or older. Another great supplement to take that you should stack with the NAD+ is ubiquinol. Ubiquinol is the most bioavailable form of CoQ10 that you can take. This will soak up free radicals. They'll help to improve the health of your mitochondria. They'll slow down the aging process and protect your neurons. Stack them together. But you can also stack this with C60. So this is a powerful stack that I'm showing you here. C60 is a very potent antioxidant. It's going to soak up free radicals 1,000 times more than a molecule of vitamin C. You can get it in extra virgin olive oil, MCT coconut oil, and also avocado oil. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. Take a teaspoon a day, every day, preferably on an empty stomach in the morning. If you work out, take it before your workout. It'll soak up the free radicals that you generate during the workout, and you will recover from your workout quicker. Now, how this works is that you take a teaspoon a day, and it's going to soak up free radicals in your cell. Now, those cells are going to perform better because they have less stress, less oxidative stress. Your mitochondria is going to improve, and you're going to have more energy, you're going to have more ATP. So the cells are going to perform better. At the vascular level, you're soaking up free radicals and reducing the concentration of oxidized LDL, so you're reducing plaque formation. At the neural level, the neurons are sometimes stressed because of free radicals. So what you want to do is soak those up. So you're reducing the stress and maintaining the health of the neuron, but you're also maintaining the health and improving the health of your mitochondria in your neuron. You need lots of mitochondria to have the ATP to be able to generate the neurotransmitters. So what will happen over time is you're going to think better. You're going to think faster. You're going to have better memory. You're going to have better cardiovascular health and better blood flow to your brain. Now, by taking C60, it also improves your immune system and your endocrine system. So your body is slowing down the aging process. This is part of the reason why this is a cornerstone for slowing down the aging process. So please go to my store, take a teaspoon a day every day. I've been taking this since 2016. And like I said, a great stack would be to take the C60, take the NAD+, and take the ubiquinol. It's a powerful stack. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. You follow my advice with how to stack these supplements, and you do proper exercise, proper diet, stay away from processed foods, drink filtered water, have mindfulness or some sort of spirituality, learn new things, talk, write, read, talk to people in the real world. When you do all these things in a holistic way, with the proper stacking of your supplements, you're going to slow down the aging process. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
The Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley is making an announcement on the FBI oversight of Arctic frost we just discussed with Congressman Wesley Hunt. Let's listen in.
That we can find from the solicitation of these telephone records, which I think emphasizes the political weaponization that was behind all this effort. And we're still getting more information, but we've released some records today, and I'll let Senator Johnson take over from here, and then each one of you colleagues can join in when you want to, whatever you want to say.
First of all, I want to thank Senator Grassley. It is because of his relentless advocacy for whistleblowers that a lot of this information is surfacing right now. We wouldn't know about the list of 100 Republican entities that were targeted by Jack Smith's Arctic Frost investigation. I don't think we know about this as well. So we need whistleblowers. I think Dan Bongino and folks in the FBI, they don't know where all the records are hidden. They still don't. They're not necessarily getting 100% cooperation. But this is outrageous what has happened. I just want to give you a timeline of this. I think you've already got the FBI sheet that shows the number of members of Congress that were targeted. Representative Kelly, Senators Graham, Haggerty, Hawley, Sullivan, Tuberville, myself, Senator Lummis, and Blackburn. This memo was dated September of 2023. To put it all into context, the Mar-a-Lago raid occurred in August of 2022. Jack Smith announced the indictments against President Trump in August of 2023. So this is almost 2 months later. They're casting this net, this fishing expedition against members of the Senate and the House. Yeah, I've been investigating this with Senator Grassley. This doesn't surprise me, but it should shock every American of what the Biden administration has done. By the way, this is the first time I was targeted by the FBI. Under the Obama administration, the same thing happened to both Senator Grassley and I as part of the Foreign Influence Task Force. We were giving a briefing to try and convince us that the Hunter Biden laptop was no big deal, basically trying to throw us off the track. So this is major corruption that's being revealed inside the Obama and Biden Department of Justice, the FBI. And I'll turn it over to, I guess, Senator Haggerty, who's one of the individuals. None of us were subject to targets of this investigation. There's no predicate. There's no reason for this other than a fishing expedition, which again should outrage and shock every American. Senator Haggerty.
Momentum. Thank you, Senator Johnson. And Chairman Grassley, thank you for your leadership in making this happen. This is an extraordinary revelation that just took place this afternoon. My colleagues and I found out, all of us Republicans, by the way, that we were placed under investigation by this FBI, under the Joe Biden FBI that was led, I presume, by Jack Smith and his predecessors. This isn't the first time that it's happened, though. Senator Johnson just mentioned this. I served on the Trump transition team in Trump Tower in 2016. Senator Blackburn was vice chair of the transition committee then, as were probably a dozen or more members of Congress. To think that we were all surveilled back then by the Obama FBI. This corruption runs deep, and it's gone on for far too long. And the fact that it's happened here again, the fact that they are looking at our records in 2023, sitting members of the United States Senate. Again, the only thing that we have in common, the only thing in common in this entire list is that we're all Republicans. They've decided to come after us. This is as partisan as it gets. The FBI and the corruption that's running there has to be cleared out. Thank God we have Kash Patel and Dan Bongino there. This has to be addressed. It has to be resolved. It needs to happen today. Thank you.
You know, they want to come, yeah. And yes, you know, what we know is this, that the FBI under Joe Biden and under Barack Obama, that they exercised activity that they had no authority to exercise. And as Senator Haggerty mentioned, we know what they did in 2016 to the Trump transition team. And now we find out that after the Mar-a-Lago raid, after the indictment of President Trump, they surveil us, people who support President Trump, members who are all Republicans. But it shows you how out of control and rotten to the core and politicized the FBI had become, and how they had
absolutely no problem at all whatsoever with political weaponization. We appreciate the information we've gotten today. We look forward to further investigation on this.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the natto kinase. You need this, especially for the fall and the winter. You need to break up clots, and what this will do is bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. Super important for cardiovascular health. Now, this fall and the winter, people are going to have problems with their cardiovascular system. This fall and the winter, they're going to have problems with their respiratory system. And this fall and winter, they're going to have razor throat. Better be prepared. Now, D3, this helps with gene expression because D3 is a gene expression cofactor. D3 also helps to get cells to go into apoptosis if they're infected. This is a major reason why you should be taking D3 in the fall and the winter. In addition, D3 helps with your vascular system and your bone density. It works with vitamin K2 to help absorb calcium. And if you're doing resistance training, it'll help to build bone matrix so you have denser bone. So you're reducing your chances of osteopenia or osteoporosis. In addition, vitamin D3 and K2 will help your cardiovascular health by pulling out some of that calcium depositing around your plaque and reducing further calcium depositing. And vitamin K2 and D3 work together to reduce severity of what is coming in the fall and winter. Yeah, it reduces the severity. Better be prepared.
Department over revelations that Special Counsel Jack Smith subpoenaed Republican lawmakers' phone records as part of Operation Arctic Frost. It was a key point of questioning in AG Pam Bondi's testimony yesterday.
Can you tell me why my phone records, when I'm the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, were sought by the Jack Smith agents? Why did they ask to know who I called and what I was doing from January 4th to the 7th? Can you tell me that?
No, Senator, and there were 8 senators in total.
Do you think that was an abuse of power?
Senator, I cannot discuss whether there is or is not an ongoing investigation.
Tennessee Senator Bill Hagerty was one of those Republicans whose phone records were swept up in this, and he joins me now. President Trump last night slamming Jack Smith on Truth, saying, wow, Jack Smith and the Biden DOJ spied on Republican senators and at least one Republican congressman. This is really bad stuff. They tried to take down the Republican Party and got caught. Do you have any more information that, as this was revealed day before yesterday, and there was a testimony yesterday from Bondi saying you can't talk about it now? Have you heard anything more?
Daniel, we're trying to get to the bottom of it right now, but I'll say this. Today, later today, the Democrats are going to vote for the 6th time to keep the government shut down. This is all part of their grand theater. This is Chuck Schumer's goal, to keep us shut down until the 18th of October when he brings all the radicals to D.C. to march on Washington in their No Kings March. This is supposedly to complain about the threat to democracy that Trump and the Republicans happen to present. Look at the threat to democracy here. Where are they complaining about what the Biden Justice Department did to us, surveilling 8 U.S. senators? We're going to get to the bottom of it. This goes all the way back to Obama as well, Dana. If you think about it, I was a private citizen then. I was one of Trump's finance chairmen. I moved into Trump Tower the day after the election in 2016. You think about this. The FBI came up and surveilled us then under the false Russia hoax pretext. Now, we find out that they were surveilling us in 2023 with Jack Smith. I think the American people can see right through this. The real threat to democracy are Chuck Schumer and the Democrats. They're projecting this, and they're having this march, and they're going to keep the government shut down at the cost of $400 million a day. We're already at $3.2 billion and counting, just so Chuck Schumer can create this theater. It's a farce, and we've got to stop all of it.
Let me know if I've heard this correctly from Senator Coons, the Democrat. He seems concerned about it as well.
If true, it is something I
think urgently needs more investigation. We need to better understand on what basis the cell phones of a number of senators were targeted, not to listen to their conversations, but to track who they were calling and from where, which just on the surface of it would strike me as a significant invasion of the right of senators to conduct their jobs. So this is something I think needs urgent follow-up.
Could this be an actually like a bipartisan agreement in the Senate?
Dana, you would think this could be a real turning point because of the constitutional implications of what you just discussed, what you just revealed. You have the executive branch snooping on the legislative branch, but the partisanship here is so bad. Again, Sugar's willing to shut down the government and inflict massive pain on the American people just for his partisan purposes. So, I wish we could get there, but the fact is that they're not willing to call out the Obama administration and the Biden administration for what they did and somehow project those practices onto the Trump administration and onto us Republicans. I can assure you that the 8 senators and the congressmen that have been listed that were surveilled, it was nothing to do with any sort of criminal activity or threat to democracy. It was the Democrats going after President Trump's allies. Those of us that stood with him, I've been with him since being his finance chairman, as a private citizen, serving in his administration in the first term, and now as U.S. Senator. If they could do it to me, Dana, think about this. A sitting U.S. Senator, they could do it to you, they could do it to anybody. What else has this Biden administration done? What else have they done to destroy the American people's faith in our law enforcement institutions?
Right, Senator Haggerty, we await more information as you do as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana.
I'm Steve Ducey. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to.
All right, let's take a look at. Let's listen to the rising.
Newspapers.com. The past. Read all about it.
Republicans are accusing the Biden administration of political weaponization after his FBI obtained 9 GOP lawmakers' phone records. The phone records were obtained via a grand jury, but it's not entirely clear why investigators at the time were seeking them. This happened under the FBI's Arctic Frost investigation, which was related to the January 6th riot vote. The targeted Republicans include Senators Ron Johnson, Lindsey Graham, Bill Haggerty, Josh Hawley, Dan Sullivan, Tommy Tuberville, Cynthia Loomis, Marsha Blackburn, and Representative Mike Kelly. Now, Senate Judiciary Chair Chuck Grassley held a press conference yesterday with some of those targeted lawmakers. Here's part of it.
There's no predicate that we can find for the solicitation of these telephone records, which I think emphasizes the political weaponization that was behind all this effort.
They're casting this net, this fishing expedition against members of the Senate and the House.
Former Special Counsel Jack Smith took over the investigation after Arctic Frost began in April 2022. Now, Arctic Frost centered around efforts from Trump and his allies to challenge the 2020 election. Congressional reporter Jamie Dupree dumped a bit of cold water on the Republican outrage, writing on X, quote, "Why would the FBI have tracked Rep. Mike Kelly from Pennsylvania on January 6th? Because his office was involved in Trump's fake electors' effort to overturn Joe Biden's victory." Dupree also posted screenshots of footage he says showed an aide to Kelly trying to get those fake elector documents to Senator Ron Johnson. Nationally, conservatives were not happy with the news. Congressman Thomas Massey wrote on X, "This is insane. What's more insane, Republican-controlled House and Senate and White House won't cut anyone's budget who did this. Also, no one will be fired," which is a shame because they absolutely should. Now our FBI is doing surveillance of our elected representatives. I mean, this is the problem. I'm told we're a democracy, and the democracy is so important. Is in fact at stake. If we vote for at stake, if we vote for Trump, we're not going to have democracy anymore. This is the Democratic Party's entire rhetoric and framing around our electoral consequences is that we need to have democracy. Does democracy not mean that the FBI, the bureaucrats should be accountable to the elected representatives, not the other way around? Here, elected representatives being surveilled this is the deep state. Well, this is the deep state at work. Subpoenas are routine in federal investigations. I mean, this was a serious investigation. These were court approved, not secretly taken or politically ordered, right? They're trying to get to the bottom of everything that happened surrounding January 6th. There were people that were riled up specifically because they thought the election was stolen, remember? Okay, so then if you connect the dots and try to see who was establishing timelines on what networks and look at conversations that were being had, especially when it comes to fake electors and all the different things surrounding it, I think this is important information to find out. How else do you figure out what was being said when, to figure out what the issue was? What was being said when? What's wrong with looking into this? This is a court approved. Like a judge who's apolitical said, yes, go ahead. You can take. A judge that's apolitical said, yes, you can go ahead and do this. Why are you laughing about that? Judges are meant to look at the rule of law and say, yes, you should go forward.
This is, I mean, Arctic frost, this is dystopia kind of stuff. This is surveillance of our elected representative. So this is.
You don't want to see who communicated with who leading up to the January 6th riot. Like, if there's a no that anyone knew anything about what was going to happen, that would be a major issue.
Can I have
would it not
disclosures about what the FBI knew, the law enforcement agencies? The elected representatives have free speech. They have First Amendment rights. They have civil liberties. They should know that the FBI should not get to decide. I don't like their political advocacy for Trump, and so I'm going to watch them, even if it was above board. Even if you got a judge to sign off on it, that's easy to do. By the way, it doesn't make it right. It makes it. It makes it. This is exactly why, by the way, as a libertarian, I have opposed the Patriot Act and FISA and all these things that Republicans now complain about, but never vote against. If you're a Republican who is outraged by the FBI surveillance of your party and you go on to vote to reauthorize FISA again, you're a very stupid person, because this is exactly what they're going to do. This is why principled libertarian and frankly leftist criticisms of law enforcement surveillance and massive bureaucracies were correct. Slippery slope arguments are always correct. There should be defunding of Patriot Act, defunding of the FBI, defunding of FISA. We need to blunt the instruments of the oppressors. We need to strip law enforcement of retained surveillance powers. And I'm frankly surprised to hear you opposing that, because didn't we have a big debate last week over Assata Shakur where you maligned like the FBI surveillance of the Black Panthers and the
I malign them killing people.
So violent criminals should not be surveilled, but our elected representatives should be?
I malign them killing people, and the whole Black Panther Party was not violent. So that's just a large overstatement that you're intentionally mischaracterizing. But we're not going to talk about that same topic. We're talking about right here. We're talking about a grand jury process and people that were trying to overturn the election and violent criminals that stormed our Capitol and left people dead and injured. And people wanted to see the causation and effect of all of that, and see which lawmakers were actively either trying to overturn the election in communication with that, understanding who was in the Congress. So if there's any investigation, to me, that's transparency. So I would like to know why this happened, because everybody who was on the Capitol, who bombarded our nation's Capitol on January 6th, is a violent criminal.
Not everyone. Everyone at the Capitol is a violent criminal.
You were there too. Everyone who President Trump pardoned, to me, should not have been there. Like, I don't think that was, I mean,
97% of the people who were at the Capitol.
They were motivated by lies.
They were motivated by lies. They were First Amendment protected activity. They were protesting the results of the election, as is their right. They were
motivated by lies, and people actively trying to overturn the election. I mean, like, what do you mean? That's a criminal act to try to overturn a federal election. That's not.
Like, it's not a criminal act.
To try to overturn an election and pay electors to change the.
To carry a sign saying the election was stolen.
No, not carry a sign.
That is not illegal.
To overturn an election. I'm not talking about protesting. I'm talking about any politician involved with trying to overturn an election. That's a criminal act. Okay, you're not supposed to overturn a federal election or pay electors to do anything of the sort. And so those people are directly motivated.
Some of them had a sincere belief that Trump had won the election and that it was being stolen from him. That the Democratic Party and Joe Biden were perpetrating a coup, they were engaged in election overturning. So you can't just use that argument.
And
that was the Republican view.
Is it untrue?
But yes, it is untrue. But you have the right to have an untrue view and to express it. That is not a crime. That is free speech. That is the First Amendment, which is why this entire thing is BS of the highest degree.
I mean, a judge has legal checks and balances, and so
Hillary Clinton thought the election was stolen. John Kerry thought the election was stolen. Al Gore thought the election was stolen because it actually was. It was unclear. This was never constituted as a crime until Donald Trump did it.
So tell me what you'd like to do next, Robbie.
Is your marketing team feeling stuck with search and social, with limited growth? Experience growth with Realize.
So tell me what you'd like to do next, Robbie, because I don't think that you or I, we can agree that the election was not stolen.
I would like you to apply your same principles of the FBI monitoring extremist groups being a problem to it monitoring our elected representatives.
They said that this was a court-approved order to try to figure out what was happening
when don't think the wiretaps on Malcolm X and everything
else. The wiretapping wasn't the issue.
Court approved.
The wiretapping,
sure they were.
The wiretapping wasn't the issue to me. The fact that they literally shot someone 100 times was the issue to me. The fact that local police went in and killed people that were part of the Black Panther movement intentionally was the issue to me, is what I'm saying. There were active steps taken to take people down, literally, so they're lifeless. This is not like public officials being killed because of a perspective. Now, if you need to look into a perspective to make sure someone is not committing a criminal act or motivating a criminal act, that's one thing. The second thing is to move forward and act on that and be incorrect. So that's what I'm like, what are you conflating the two? Like, nobody's after these lawmakers. They're literally
they look into their text messages.
And now they're not.
Tapping their phone lines. I think that's
with a court-approved order. With a court, that's what I'm saying.
You're right.
It's supposed to be apolitical.
Because the law allows this to happen. Those laws that support this kind of thing, FISA, the Patriot Act, need to be repealed immediately. And if Republicans at their moment of supreme political power do not take decisive action to rein in law enforcement that is weaponized against them, they are the most irrelevant and stupid, moronic party that has ever existed. And unfortunately, that is the case because they're not going to do anything about it. It's going to come up for reauthorization, and Thomas Massey and a couple other people who are not total morons will vote against it. Maybe Marjorie Taylor Greene, maybe a few others. And most of the party will fall in line behind it, not realizing that this is exactly how the deep state spies on them.
Okay, so they have some work to do then, according to you, to handle all this right now.
I got there. It's a dig at Republicans, so maybe at least you can appreciate that.
I get that's the one piece of this conversation that I appreciate. AOC.
First of all, the voting machines code was never audited. So you don't know if there was horizontal control or not to flip. Secondly, the issue wasn't so much of the issue about the election of 2020 was that we had a lot of certification of votes, but not a true audit. So the issue was the audit, not the certification. See, they circumvented this. They did like wordplay. Oh, it was certified. A governor certified it. Well, what about audit it? What about prove that the voter rolls are correct? Prove that the machines didn't flip. Prove that there wasn't after the fact mail-in ballots that just happen to magically appear that all go to one candidate. These are problematic issues that need to be addressed. So there should have been a kickback. They should have kicked the whole process back to the state level before the senators certified and said, make sure it's audited. Verify, audit it, verify, certify, and then send it to the Senate again. That's what should have happened on January 6th, but it didn't. Unfortunately, it didn't. Now, statistically, when you see that jump to fusion with the counts, after 4 a.m. in the morning, the day after, that's a signal that it was stolen. There's a statistical signal there. It could have been verified if there was a proper audit. There was never a proper audit, so this is a problem. I agree with Bobby that this thing's going all the way back to the Patriot Act with a ballooned out surveillance state. I'm against the national security state. I want the national security state to be truncated, if not totally abolished. I think the CIA and the FBI needs to be completely destroyed, totally dismantled. Now, in terms of the impropriety that was going on during the Obama administration and the Biden administration, there needs to be a thorough investigation and hold these people accountable. And forget about this whole statute of limitation crap. Because what this is doing is there's a mosaic here. You gotta step away. It's not just the actual, of course, the actual Operation Arctic Frost is problematic and against the law. But there's a mosaic. There was a weaponization of the judicial branch, of the Justice Department, of the FBI, the CIA against political opponents. And those political opponents were the Republican Party. The Democratic Party weaponized the deep state to go after their political opponents. That's the big issue. So you look at the mosaic, you have Arctic Frost. You have the Russiagate issue, the Russia hoax, the Russiagate hoax. You have the laptop gate issue with Hunter Biden and the FBI slow walking that. By them slow walking, they affected the election. You have the impropriety that was going on with Hillary Clinton's campaign. You have the Justice Department and the district attorneys using lawfare against Trump and his allies, his cabinet, his advisors. So there's a mosaic here. It's not just Arctic Frost. There was a weaponization of an administrative state that tried to either demonize or delegitimize Trump's administration. And that includes this Loretta James. That includes all these different lawsuits that Trump had to deal with, and all of his cabinet members and his political allies had to deal with. What happened with Roger Stone, with what happened with Stephen Bannon, what happened to Peter Navarro. These are all related. It's a mosaic theory here. If you look at that landscape, Arctic Frost is a piece of a larger picture of an out-of-control national security state that thinks that they're above board and that they can be easily aligned to autocratic regimes. And in this case, the Biden and the Obama administration. Now, why have they aligned themselves to the Democratic Party? I don't know. I don't know why that is. But the thing is what's been going on. When you look at the whole mosaic, if you just look at just the Arctic Frost issue, that's bigger than Watergate. But it's even bigger than that because there's a mosaic here that goes all the way back to 2016, to all the way to now. 2016 to now. And you have people in the FBI that's still slow walking and not helping cash. And I'm sure that you have people at the DOJ that are slow walking, not having paying bond. It's crazy. It's crazy. We need to hold these people accountable. All right, let's listen into Bloomberg here.
According to FlightAware, the FAA reported staffing issues in Chicago, Las Vegas, Nashville, and Philadelphia. That's at the airports, as well as air traffic control centers in Atlanta, Boston, Dallas, and Houston, some small towns that have a couple of flights. More than 570 delays were at Chicago's O'Hare alone. This is just going to keep getting worse. As sick-outs take place, the unions haven't even started balking yet about this. Will this be decided at the airport?
It absolutely could. We saw that was a huge
in a world where you've constantly been told
in 2019. And you know what is stunning is leave it to Congress to make an already difficult trip to the airport that much worse, and it is getting worse. There's a website called liveatc.net, and people are pulling clips from some of these pilots as they're being told by the air traffic controllers that their towers are closed, and you hear the pilots say, "Wait, is this because of the government shutdown?" I mean, the whole thing is so bizarre. And of course, that would pressure and should pressure Congress. You hope that they would be able to come to an agreement to keep the government down before it gets worse. But it is already pretty bad. As you mentioned, 3,500 delays yesterday and promising to be worse today. So I do think that is something, in addition to the paycheck issue, which could light a fire, so to speak, under some of these maybe moderates outside of leadership to come together. Because the leadership and the White House certainly don't seem at this point to be budging.
Did you hear this, Michelle, what happened in Burbank yesterday, what Jeannie's referring to? The pilots keyed into the tower looking for permission to land. And according to this live ATC, it's an incredible listen, there was a message. The tower is closed due to staffing. How'd you like to be in 32E on that flight?
Yeah, well, it does seem like a sort of bizarre, almost Black Mirror sort of thing to be happening, but very serious and a real risk. And we know the American public has a very little patience for these sorts of transportation glitches as far as they go on and interrupting their day-to-day lives and their vacations and other trips, business trips and the like. But the other mention, Jeannie, that you had of a particular pain point is that paycheck issue again. I just want to go back to something Trump said yesterday, because he said, we're going to take care of our people, and he qualified that with, some don't deserve it, and he said, we'll deal with them a different way. I'm wondering, Rick and Jeannie, what you think about what the president might have meant there, and knowing that it's always a bit dangerous to get inside the head of someone who is deliberately obfuscating and loves to be unpredictable. But what did he mean there?
Yeah, I'll take a crack at that. Historically, Republicans have felt the government bureaucracy sides with the Democrats. And so part of the construct around making it smaller, which has been a threshold issue for Republicans since the 1970s, has been to shrink the influence of government employees who are left-leaning or side with the Democrats. This was a major construct within Russ Vought's Project 2025. And so the government under Donald Trump is clearly picking winners and losers. They have certain people who they have put into office or side with them, and they're going to take care of them. And then there are a lot of other people, millions perhaps, who make up that part of the bureaucracy. They don't call it the deep state anymore, but that's what they think. Which is keeping them from running an efficient government the way Donald Trump wants to run it. And they want to get rid of those folks. And so it wouldn't surprise me that the next phase of activity from the White House is actually to start not furloughing people, but actually laying off permanently a lot of these government workers, because that is the game plan which they're pursuing. And they've only slowed it down after the backlash of the Doge effort. But I would anticipate that gearing back up.
Hey, Jeannie, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, because I love when Rick Davis has to get in the head of Donald Trump and Russ Vogt and Stephen Miller, so that was very good. I think what we're seeing here is a division, essentially, between Russ Vogt and Stephen Miller, who are committed to dismantling the government, as Rick just discussed, and particularly hitting people who they feel are not in line with the politics of the far right of the MAGA coalition, and people who have a better political sense like Donald Trump. And I hate to say it, Marjorie Taylor Greene, but she does. She knows how these decisions are impacting people on the ground. I mean, we're talking about pay, huge impact. She's talking about the ACA subsidies, and just yesterday we had Patty Murray on the floor of the Senate talking about the 10 states, all red states, who are looking at like triple, quadruple payments for their premiums. Who can afford that? And that's going to hit the Republican red states. And so, you know, Marjorie Taylor Greene really did Democrats a service by showing there's a disjuncture here yesterday, but she also, I think, is doing Donald Trump a service by saying, look, this is not good politics.
Jeannie Shanzano and Rick Davis, Bloomberg Politics contributors, will return in our second hour with much more to talk about here on day 8 of the shutdown and many other stories swirling here in the nation's capital.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost. Boomer Boost has 68 nutrients. It has a very comprehensive compound profile shown on the screen. You can read the label on my website. This will target your heart, your vascular system, your musculature, your brain function, rev up your metabolism, increase your energy levels, and slow down the aging process. You will feel the effects of this within 72 hours. Your energy levels will be steady throughout the day. You're going to have this more activeness in your daily activities. You're going to want to work out. You're going to be wanting to move around. Your just overall activity will improve. And if you take Boomer Boost over a longer period of time, you're going to actually physically see a slowing down of the aging process. This stacks well with C60, with the turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans, the Max 35 or Cleanse, the Gladiator barley or the heirloom barley. So there's lots of ways to stack this very high quality supplement. It's a powder, and you take it with soft foods like hummus or yogurt or even applesauce. You can mix it in a smoothie. You can mix it in just milk or filtered water. I mix it with soft foods, but take it every day. Again, you will feel the effects within 72 hours and you'll have more energy. It's a steady burn of energy throughout the whole day. And over a longer period of time, you're going to start seeing the anti-aging benefits. This is going to help to boost up your immune system, help with your endocrine system, even help with your brain function. You're going to be able to concentrate better. You're going to get rid of that brain fog. It's going to help that neuroplasticity. You're going to improve your memory and cognition. You'll be thinking faster. You're going to have better sleep. So it's a great supplement to take. Take it every day. Now, you can take it separately or mix it with the Boomer Boost. I mix it. But heirloom barley is a high-density protein that will detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and help soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. By bringing down inflammation and detoxifying your body and soaking up those free radicals, you're helping your immune system, your endocrine system, your cardiovascular health, even your brain function. So this is very important to take every day. It's a powder. You mix it the same way as the Boomer Boost. And like I said, you can stack these together to get max benefit. You can also help to control your A1C levels. Super important. Controlling your blood glucose is super important, especially from the SAD diet that's going on in the United States. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the heirloom barley, get the Boomer Boost, get healthy. This is going to help slow down the aging process and improve your different systems, including your immune system. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Live from Washington, D.C., this is Balance of Power with Joe Matthew.
Day 8 of the shutdown, there will likely be a 9th. Welcome to the Wednesday edition as the Senate votes again to reopen the government with the same results expected. We'll get the Trump administration's view on all this ahead with a live report from the North Lawn at the White House and Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall. And we'll spend some time with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle this hour. Republican Congressman Jason Smith, chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, will be with us in just a moment, and we'll compare notes with Democratic Congresswoman Melanie Stansbury of New Mexico. With analysis this hour from our panel, Bloomberg Politics contributors Jeannie Shanzano and Rick Davis. They're with us for the hour. All after a look at Wall Street. Let's get up to date on the trade this Wednesday with Charlie Pellet. He's at World Headquarters in New York. Charlie, hi.
Thank you very much, Joe Matthew. Day 8. Wall Street shrugs, stocks push higher. We're at a record again. S&P now at 67.51. Looking at a gain right now of 36 points, up by about 0.5%. You run the GIP chart on the Bloomberg. We're close to session highs right now. The Dow up 146, up by about 0.3%. NASDAQ up 190, gain there of 0.8%. The Bloomberg Mag 7 index higher by 0.5% with a 10-year currently yielding 4.10%, and the 2-year 3.57%. Spot gold at $4,057 the ounce. That is a record. Precious metal up now by 1.8%. West Texas Intermediate crude up 1.5%. WTI 62.64 a barrel. And Bitcoin now higher by 0.9%. Back to the $123,000 handle. Bitcoin at 123,113. So the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all advancing. Automotive news, we got BMW shares. The ADR is down 5.6% after lowering its financial guidance on weak sales in China and tariff costs. And Jefferies Financial Group says it has $161 million of exposure to funds that held trade receivables and loans of bankrupt auto parts supplier First Brands Group. Jefferies shares, they're down by 1.4%. Again, recapping, stocks higher, S&P at a record, up now by 0.5%. And for on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcasts. Back we go to Washington. Once again, your host, here he is, Joe Matthew.
All right, Charlie Pellet reminding us there's a world outside of Washington. How about that? The S&P 500 at a record, even as we plunge further into a government shutdown with huge questions about how we get out of one. I'll let you know there were already no votes as expected on the Democratic version of the continuing resolution. The House has already done that now for, I believe, the 6th time today, and we're watching voting now, I should say the Senate, watching voting now on the Senate floor on the Republican CR. This is the one that did pass the House and is expected to fail again here. Thanks for being with us on the Wednesday edition of Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio. Of course, it's a different mathematical equation in the Senate where you need 60 votes, something that I discussed with Republican Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma. Let's listen.
The challenge that we have is we don't have 60 votes. We're not even close to that. So the alternative then is to just keep the government closed down forever. That doesn't help us either. We've got to actually have conversations with Republicans, Democrats who disagree on a lot of things, figure out how we can get 60 votes in the Senate to agree to something and then to be able to move.
Conversations with Republicans and Democrats, cats and dogs living together. That will actually occur this hour on this program. We'll be joined in a moment by Republican Congressman Jason Smith, a key figure in this debate as he chairs the important House Ways and Means Committee. As I mentioned as well, Congresswoman Melanie Stansbury of New Mexico will join us with the Democratic view. But we want to start at the White House here because, of course, President Trump is so important when it comes to messaging and direction for the leadership on Capitol Hill. Bloomberg's Washington correspondent Tyler Kendall's on the North Lawn right now on a rainy day here in the Capitol. Tyler, what's going on?
Yeah, hey, Joe. Well, it's so far a relatively quiet day here at the White House. We haven't really heard much from officials in the way when it comes to any sort of progress on reopening the government. But we have heard from House Speaker Mike Johnson asked directly after President Trump yesterday commented on the potential that federal workers might not get their back pay. House Speaker Mike Johnson saying that his interpretation of the law is that they are entitled to that pay, saying that they shouldn't face financial consequences just because there is a shutdown. Of course, this comes after reports, including our own here at Bloomberg News, that the OMB has drafted a memo that says that federal workers are not guaranteed compensation once the federal government reopens. President Trump was asked directly about this yesterday, and it's interesting to see here because it does appear that the OMB might be taking aim at this 2019 law that was actually signed by President Trump, essentially guaranteeing that there would be this back pay. The OMB now saying that it needs to be explicitly appropriated by Congress. Joe, we're already starting to see potential solutions here. We heard from Republican Senator Susan Collins yesterday, who's floating a potential backup option where maybe there could be a measure tied to a shutdown bill that would eventually reopen the government. The thing is, that measure isn't currently in this clean CR that we're seeing them currently vote on as we speak. And at this point, it would have to be added, but we know that at the moment, we are just going through the same process over and over again, voting, Joe, on the same clean stopgap measure that would fund the government until November 21st.
Starting to feel like Groundhog Day, Tyler. I'm looking at the president's schedule, by the way. Nothing public until a couple of hours from now. He's participating in an event not geared toward the shutdown or trade, as we frequently see, but a roundtable in the state dining room on Antifa. Do we know anything about what's going to happen and how this will work?
Well, we are expecting them to welcome us, reporters in the White House poll today, into that room. There are reports that independent journalists will also be there to discuss Antifa. We know that President Trump had moved to formally designate Antifa, which is a loose collective of far-left militant groups, as an official terrorist organization. But there have been questions since that executive order on exactly how this would work. Federal law allows for international groups to be labeled as foreign terrorist organizations, but we haven't seen how this would be enacted for this domestic group and how broad-ranging it would be. So potentially there could be some sort of details there, but it does come as President Trump, of course, escalates his rhetoric against mayors in Democratic cities, Democratic governors around the country, as we've seen National Guard troops invoked. And I would expect some common themes surrounding the president's moves there to emerge today when we enter that room.
All right, Tyler. It's always a good day in Washington when Tyler Kendall's in the pool. She's live at the White House. We'll have more a little bit later on as we approach that event at 3 p.m. Tyler mentioned back pay. This has been a big question in Washington, or maybe it's not so much a question any longer. Speaker Mike Johnson, who's going to join us on the late edition of Balance of Power today, seemed to put this to bed a bit earlier. Let's listen to what he said.
That's my position. I think they should be. They should not be subjected to harm and financial dire straits because Chuck Schumer wants to play political games. With regard to paying the troops, I want everybody to listen to me very carefully. Hakeem Jeffries and the House Democrats, as leaders of police said so well, are clamoring to get back here and have another vote because some of them want to get on record and say they're for paying the troops. We already had that vote. It's called the CR.
It's called the CR, he said, and that CR is getting a vote as we speak in the Senate. It is likely to fail. But these are really important matters. And of course, we know the 10th is the next pay cycle for federal workers, including the staffers of members of Congress. And then the 15th is the paycheck date for the military. We're joined now by Congressman Jason Smith, Republican, of course, chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, who's watching all of this from the other side in his chamber. And Mr. Chairman, I want to welcome you back to Bloomberg TV and radio. Before we get into all the politics around this, are you with the Speaker on back pay for federal workers?
So without a doubt, back pay for federal workers who have not been furloughed, who have been working, should absolutely be paid. There's no question about that. Where the discussion is for individuals who have been furloughed, who are not working during the shutdown. That is where the big debate is.
Isn't that covered by law, Mr. Chairman, or are you referring to those workers who were furloughed before things shut down? Because that's 750,000 people now, right now, correct?
So I don't know the exact number, but what has been considered an essential employee and what has been considered.
Looks like we may be having trouble with the connection. Mr. Chairman, if you can hear me, we might need to reconnect with Jason Smith because the technology gods may not be playing. This is something that we've talked about, of course, since this came up yesterday at the White House and the law that's on the books going back some years. We've talked about this a couple of times now, the Government Employee Fair Treatment Act of 2019, which the president did sign during the record-long shutdown, 35 days. GETTR, they call it, widely interpreted as ensuring that furloughed workers automatically are compensated when shutdowns end and they are, in fact, reinstated in their jobs. There's a question about whether that law will be interpreted the same way by this administration. The Office of Management and Budget says GETTR has been deficient, having been amended after its passage 9 days later on the 25th of January in 2019. I think that we've reconnected with Congressman Jason Smith. I'm sorry for the interruption. Mr. Chairman. I was just talking about the Government Employee Fair Treatment Act of 2019, which is the law that is, of course, at hand here, which the president signed in his first term. It does ensure that furloughed workers are made whole following the end of a shutdown. Should we be looking at this law differently?
I think what we need to be looking at, we shouldn't even have to discuss this law at hand. The Democrats need to open up government. They're on the 6th vote right now in the United States Senate, blocking just a continuation of funding. We're just trying to fund government as it was on September 30th today. If they just open it up, there would be no question about who's getting paid. All federal employees would get paid. Do your job. Do something that you did 6 months ago. This bill is exactly the same to what they passed in March of this year, but they're only holding it hostage right now because of the unrelated policy objectives. They don't oppose anything within this 24-page continuing resolution of funding. They want things outside of the bill. That is why they're voting no. They're not voting against what's in it. And who's affected? The 1.3 million military personnel a week from today that will not have a paycheck. This is absolutely inappropriate.
Do you have the same approach then to military paychecks? There's been a question, I'm sure you've discussed it with your colleagues, about whether there should be a separate piece of legislation to make sure that the military is paid, maybe using that $150 billion in the big, beautiful bill. The speaker clearly doesn't like that idea. How about you?
The speaker is exactly right. We've already done our job. We funded government more than 3 weeks ago, paying all military personnel. The Democrats have always supported this in the past, but once again, they're playing political games with people's future and people's livelihoods. They need to stop obstructing. The 60-vote filibuster over the United States Senate, they need to break that right now if it means delivering paychecks for military and to open up government. It is unacceptable that Chuck Schumer and Democrats can hold hostage the economy, they can hold hostage the government.
You hear all the same arguments that I do, Mr. Chairman, specifically when it comes to not necessarily impoundment, but the extension of Obamacare subsidies. And I realize that you're framing that as an unrelated issue. Democrats say, hey, we've had 2 rescissions packages so far, and letters are going out with rising premiums. If we don't deal with this now, we're going to miss the deadline at the end of the year. What's your response?
Premiums have gone up 80% in the last 10 years in Obamacare exchanges. Premiums have continued to go up because it's been a complete failure. What they've done with these subsidies only increases the incentive for insurance companies to raise premiums, which is the wrong thing. Can we get together and have a good discussion about access to healthcare? We absolutely should. I represent an area that rural healthcare is in dire need. But guess what? One of the demands the Democrats have within let's reopen government for 28 days is by cutting $50 billion for rural healthcare. That is unacceptable. So let's have a real discussion. But those premium tax credits, they don't expire until December 31st. And the only reason why they expire is because the Democrats made them temporary and not permanent in the Inflation Reduction Act.
Well, should they expire? I know that you have members of your conference who say these were COVID-era subsidies and they have no purpose now.
They should not be extended as they are, because a married couple making more than $600,000 a year are being subsidized for this. That's completely unacceptable. We have to look at what will bring down the cost of premiums, what will provide more access to healthcare. This is what needs to be in the discussion. And let's try to do some transformational healthcare policy that delivers for all Americans, not just 24 million Americans, because that's what's on the exchanges. There's 347 million Americans. 174 million are employee healthcare insurance, and we're not even discussing that with all of these premium tax credits. 78 million people are on Medicare. 82 million are on Medicaid. That's not even being discussed by those folks on premium tax credits. So we're only talking about 24 million people when they talk about those premium tax credits.
Well, you've got a pretty unique view as chair of the House Ways and Means Committee. And outside of the blame game, and I know there's a lot of noise in politics here, and you're effective at making your case Mr. Chairman, outside of who's at fault, how much longer do you think this goes? The president said 4 or 5 days we might start to talk about real mass layoffs. Is that when the government reopens?
You know, it's disturbing. There's no winners here. The people that's losing is the American public. I said at the very beginning, if the Democrats force the shutdown, it will probably be longer than the prior shutdown, which was 35 days. Because the Democrats will have to vote for the bill that they have continued to vote against now 6 times over the United States Senate, and the same bill that Chuck Schumer and the Democrats voted for in March. Nancy Pelosi has been on record numerous times saying you should never shut down government for policy issues. You should fund government. Let's follow through with those actions.
It's looking, by the way, like the House passed continuing resolution that we're discussing here, the Republican version that we're discussing with the chairman, is on the precipice of failure in the Senate. And with that said, Mr. Chairman, we could go through this 10, 20, 30 more times. To your point, who knows how long we're going to be closed. We've got November 21 as an end date on this CR. Is that going to need to be extended? Because, my goodness, this goes another couple of weeks. It's going to be a pretty short continuing resolution.
Well, the Democrat CR that they wanted was only 28 days with an additional $1.4 trillion worth of spending, including providing health insurance for illegals and taking away $50 billion of rural health care. That was their alternative. We have to just open up government now. There's a CR that has passed the House. It's over in the Senate. They're on the 6th vote. The only reason why it's not passed in the Senate is because of a procedure vote where the Democrats are filibustering. Let them vote on the bill. Stop the filibuster. Just let them vote on the bill. If they do that, we'll be able to pass it.
Mm-hmm. You think we should do the filibuster like we used to in the old days? Like actually have to get up there and filibuster and keep talking until you can't?
I think people have to earn their stripes, and they absolutely should have to actually filibuster. Be talking at the microphone instead of just like, okay, if there's not 60 votes, it's not filibuster proof. That's right. Crazy. Force their hand.
Well, that goes both ways, Congressman. I guess that's something you won't have to worry about in the House. But I'm glad that you could join us today, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the insights, as always. As I mentioned, he's knee-deep in this. He's in the center of it. As chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, Congressman Jason Smith, just one of the voices that we're going to be hearing today, the decision makers who are trying to make their way through this, leading all the way to the Speaker of the House himself. He's going to join us in the 5 o'clock edition, the late edition of Balance of Power here on Bloomberg TV and radio, with his view on things, having stayed in Washington at this point, while many of his members have gone home. They'll be back next week, presumably. But do join us around 5:20 p.m. Eastern when we talk with the Speaker. Later this hour, we'll talk with a Democrat in Melanie Stansbury, the Congresswoman from New Mexico's 1st District, who knows what it's like to have troops deployed in a town in her state. We'll have more on that coming up right here on Bloomberg TV and radio.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the foundation to help slow down the aging process. This foundation involves probiotics and a multivitamin. The multivitamin is the complete multivitamin. This multivitamin will have the multivitamins that you need for proper enzymatic activity, so your cells perform at its best. Take it every day, drink it with filtered water. I also have 2 types of probiotics, veggie cap version and the powdered version. By having a good probiotic, your gut biome is going to improve, your metabolism will improve, you're going to be able to absorb your nutrients, your digestion will improve, your communication between your gut and your liver and your gut and your brain will improve. You'll be able to sleep better, you will have less brain fog, you're going to be able to concentrate, your thinking will improve, and your skin will improve. To start an anti-aging process, the best thing that you can do is get the multivitamin and the probiotic, take that every day, and then stack on top of that. That's the foundation, the multivitamin and the probiotics. Then you add in the Max 35 or Cleanse to boost up the immune system, C60 to soak up the free radicals, turmeric ashwagandha lignans to help with your vascular system, your immune system, and your brain function, and Boomer Boost to rev up your metabolism and increase your energy levels. That's a very powerful stack to slow down the aging process. But you also need to prepare for the fall and winter, because this fall and winter in the United States is going to be problematic. And it's not so much the immediacy of the fall and winter, but the aftershock from the fall and winter that's going to be problematic. But you can take my advice or don't take my advice. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the probiotics, get the multivitamin, use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. Thank you for listening. That's the end of my broadcast. I will re-release this on all my channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Please help support the work by sharing the links and asking your social media to follow me and get the great products that I offer. Again, use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.